How did you use malicious compliance to absolutely wreck someone? My brother-in-law worked for UPS for 17 years. He was a bit of a joker and was constantly getting in trouble for coming to work with crazy hair colors or cornrows. He was a big Italian guy and was told it wasn't appropriate. It was always something, but they couldn't say anything about him wearing sunglasses. So his little rebellion was that he'd wear the most outrageous sunglasses he could think of. Ones shaped like giant red lips, guitars with the stems sticking up, purple ones with rhinestone hearts on them, anything for a laugh. After a while, people knew him by his glasses. If someone said they lived in a certain area, I'd say, "Oh, my brother-in-law is your UPS man, the guy with the crazy glasses." And their reply would almost always be something like, "Oh, John, yeah, I love that guy. He's funny." He passed away 4 years ago. He was hit by a drunk driver while he was out walking one night. When we attended his funeral, all of the guys from work came dressed in their browns with crazy sunglasses on. His best friend gave his eulogy wearing a pair of neon green glasses, 3 times the size of his face, and the pastor even borrowed John's guitar glasses when he went up to speak. After his funeral, we counted, he had over 200 different pairs. What started as him just being a pain in the butt to his boss, ended as a tribute to his character in life of always wanting to make someone else smile. My boss is a huge D-bag. All he does all day long is walk around and make sure everyone has their shirt tucked in, and generally be a negative Nelly who everyone hates. So I came into work on my birthday the other day and my friend runs up to me and yells, "Kevin, happy birthday!" right in front of my boss's office. He looks up and says, Kevin?" I'm thinking he's going to say happy birthday since he's no doubt heard her. Instead, he says, "Yeah, go ahead and tuck your shirt in, okay?" And he does the hand signal like he's tucking in an imaginary shirt. So I say, "Okay, no problem. I just have to put my stuff down real quick and I'll take care of it." So I walk over to my desk, which takes approximately 7 seconds to get to. I put my stuff down, and as I'm doing it, he comes up behind me again and says, "Kevin, I said tuck in your shirt." So I quickly tuck it in, and as he's walking literally right by me, I say, "Sorry, I just had to put my stuff down first." And he walks away like I never said a word. For the record, I work in a call center, so no customers actually ever see us. Also, this was more the proverbial straw that broke the camel's back in this situation. This guy had been steadily cutting our pay since he got the job, and everyone hated him more for that than anything. We used to have no dress code whatsoever, so the following is just a way of getting things back to the way they used to be. Immediately, I bust out my HR manual and check out the rule on tucked-in shirts. Turns out you must tuck in all shirts except a Hawaiian shirt or Gayabira shirt. So, I took my butt to Walmart and bought 10 of those motherfrickers and wore the most obnoxious Hawaiian-looking shirt the next day. The second I walked in, he looked me up and down, glared, turned around and walked away. When everyone asked why I was wearing such a ridiculous shirt, I told them about the loophole, and now half my office is wearing Hawaiian shirts and it's driving my boss crazy. All within the guidelines outlined by company policy. You know, although it does sound like your boss is just definitively a bad dude, I do have to hand it to him knowing the HR handbook so well that he immediately knew there was an exception for those shirts and just dropped it. Well done on you and your office mates for sticking it to him. A couple of friends of mine work at Walmart. They found out that kilts are well within the dress code as long as they're the correct color. Drove their managers nuts. It's been a year and absolutely no problems though. While I was in the Navy, it was recommended that I get an extensive surgery on my ankle. My command felt that I didn't deserve a bunch of time off for surgery, end quote, so they'd approve it but none of the convalescent leave. They refused to sign any paperwork. First thing I did was hit them with the regulation stating that they were required to respond to all requests within a certain amount of time. 3 days, I think. They responded with a no. So then I had Navy Legal draw up paperwork, with accordance to regulations, that my command would be responsible for 100% of my medical care if they didn't abide by my doctor's orders. I then let them know that that would mean that all of my medical care would then be handled by civilians and the command would be responsible for paying the bill out of their budget. They approved my surgery, convalescent leave, and convalescent leave extension. Used to work at a TV station. Absolutely awful management and horrible bosses. Complained about it to friends all the time. Some would even ask me on Facebook about my job and I'd reply, but I knew I could get fired for speaking ill of the company. So I read the HR handbook and found out as long as I don't specifically name the company, I can't be fired for it. So about a month later, I realize I can't take this crap anymore and post on Facebook how terrible my job is, never mentioning the company by name. They fire me a day later, I gladly walk out of that building and into a lawyer's office, and I got $17,800, my yearly salary. Seriously. Feels good, man. I used to work for this small-town, twice-weekly newspaper. The editor and publisher, mayor, county commissioner, and a few other people were skimming tax dollars. When I confronted my boss about it, he told me he'd blackball me if I said anything. So I went to the local television station, tipped them off, and they uncovered the story. When they won their awards, my name was added to the list of reporters. I still can't get a job as a journalist, but damn if it didn't feel good. Worked in one corporate kitchen where our GM didn't like our music, so he'd put on children's music. So we all started singing along at the top of our lungs. We won that war of attrition. Years later, in another kitchen, we had surround sound in a closed kitchen, where the uppity GM didn't like our music and started passing draconian censorship rules about the music. So we switched it to children's music for a week. Moral of the story? Never underestimate the power of a kitchen crew of misfits singing Banana Phone at the top of their lungs to fight fascism, motherfricker. Viva la Raffi! Not so much a tuck-in shirt freak situation, but here it goes. My boss went away for 3 or 4 weeks for a conference, and while he was away, a workmate and I had an idea. A George Foreman grill, and then we'd go to the deli and grab stuff for lunch. Hamburgers, lamb chops, pork steaks, stuff like that. We did this every day for over a month, and when our boss got back, he put a stop to it with the exact words, "I don't want that thing inside the office." So we took it to the shared kitchen area on our floor. We'd rented a suite. When he got angry about that and said, "I don't want it on this floor," we took it down to the underground parking area and used the power outlet at his parking space while he was out at lunch. He caught us because he was coming back from lunch with a business partner in the car with him, and we were hunched over a tiny George Foreman grill making hamburger patties. Imagine 3 IT guys crouching on the ground like cavemen in a poorly lit underground parking lot cooking hamburgers on the concrete floor. Yeah, it went over about as well as you'd think. If he didn't specifically use the words, "take that home or I'll break it and throw it in the trash," our next step was going to be to use the PowerPoint in the parking lot of the church directly opposite to the building and facing his office. Back when I was working and attending classes, I'd go straight from campus to work, getting me anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes early before my shift. On occasion, my boss would ask me to help him out with something before I'd clock on, putting something away or answering the phone. Over the span of a couple of months, this evolved from occasionally to every day your shift starts when you get here. After doing this for a couple of weeks, still clocking in at my usual 3 p.m., I decide that if I'm working for a few extra minutes each day, I'm gonna get paid for it. I did this once, and I didn't make it an hour into my shift before my boss was screaming at me and throwing down the employee handbook, saying that I'm only allowed to clock in 5 minutes before and after my scheduled shift. Needless to say, I made it a point to not check in until 5 minutes after my scheduled shift every day, no matter how early I was. Fast forward 3 months and my boss got fired. He got what was coming to him. Yep, you can't let certain bosses take the extra stuff you do for granted. I'm also of the opinion that if they need a couple of extra seconds help carrying a box or something, they can have it for free, but if they want me doing my main work duties before my shift, that counts as starting my shift early. Not my story, but a co-worker's. We worked at a water park. Supervisor was a witch who wouldn't let the lead guards at the top of the tallest slide in the park go to the bathroom. The guard at the top is radioing that he needs to take a dump, but she won't let him. Mind you, the lead guards are allowed to ride down every once in a while to make sure no tubes are stuck. The lead guard is about to crap his pants in front of a ton of guests, so he goes into the utility closet and craps in a bucket of cat litter we keep to clean up vomit. He then proceeds to ride down the slide to clean himself off and left the supervisor to clean up his bucket of crap. My father was working at a post office in the early 80s. It was an unusually hot day, 85 degrees Fahrenheit inside. There were no fans available, so it was crazy. Men weren't allowed to wear shorts, but Dad came to work wearing shorts which covered his knees and part of his shins, figuring that would be fine. It wasn't fine, and his boss sent him home to change. He returned in his grandfather's bonjour from the late 19th century, top hat and all. The boss kept asking if it wasn't a little hot in that suit, but he said he was fine. Not work, but school. I'm a senior in high school, and one day a bunch of senior guys decided to start Tank Top Tuesday. Every Tuesday, about half the senior guys would come to school in a tank top. Our school had no rule about tank tops except that the straps had to be at least 2 inches thick, so we didn't anticipate any problem, especially considering girls at our school wore tank tops all the time. After the first instance, the school announced that boys were no longer allowed to wear tank tops, and when questioned why, they claimed that the visible armpit hair was a distraction that inhibited learning. The following Tuesday, we all went to school wearing tank tops and sporting shaved armpits. In short, school claims guys can't wear tank tops because armpit hair is distracting. Next day, half the senior guys show up in tank tops with shaved armpits. At a former workplace, the dress code changed. Men were no longer allowed to wear shorts. Women could wear skirts. I started wearing a kilt because skirts were okay in the rulebook. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Not work-related, but school. In high school, I wore a t-shirt advertising a website that gave out free contraceptive. I was called down to the principal's office for 3 or 4 hours. My cool teachers thought it was awesome in the AM classes, and I was told I was promoting abhorrent behavior. I posited that I was in fact trying to prevent unwanted pregnancies. I lost my fight and was told I had to leave if I didn't have another shirt. Rather than leaving, I put a sticky note over the M in the problematic word and spent the rest of the day annoying faculty about fantastic lakeside condos that were being given away for free in freecondos.com. When Circuit City was still in business, I worked in the warehouse. For whatever reason, they had a strict dress policy of khaki pants, this awful collar shirt that also had to be tucked in as well. This went for everyone, even in warehouse. I discovered through an old warehouse employee guide, shoved in a drawer years ago and forgotten about, that as long as warehouse employees had khaki-colored shorts with no cargo pockets and a t-shirt with a Circuit City logo, there'd be no problem. Circuit City stopped making Circuit City t-shirts long before I started, but thanks to a local Salvation Army, I was able to pick up 2 Circuit City t-shirts and a quick trip to Target for some shorts, and now my new uniform was set. My managers were not happy about my appearance, claiming I looked sloppy and unkempt. Even better, there was the giant black dude from the warehouse who hated his job and just slept in the back and talked on his cell phone all day. When he found out about this new rule, he too had some old Circuit City t-shirts and joined in. Management hated us working together. I miss Circuit City. At my old school, they had rules about hair length, mostly for guys, and our teachers got pretty uptight about it. The only hard rules were that they couldn't pass our eyebrows or the collar area. Being the witty D-bag I was, I used a crap ton of gel to slick up my hair and do obnoxious things with it. It was all raised, so it never crossed my eyebrows or collar. I got away with it for 2 months until the principal changed the rules. All just because of me. Working at Big Five, there was a policy that men had to be clean-shaven or have a mustache. No beards or goatees or starburns. I cannot wear a mustache without looking like either a prevert or an 80s adult film star, but I hate shaving every day, so I grew out the biggest, creepiest Hulk Hogan stache ever witnessed and wore it proudly for the entire time I worked there. I work in food service. My job created a rule one day that one's hair cannot touch one's collar. I have rather long hair, but I always kept it in a braid and wore hats anyways. I was informed of this rule about 2 hours before the end of my shift and told that I had to comply immediately because I was breaking health code. I politely informed them that no, I was not. This was store policy, but I'd be happy to come in with my hair up the next day. I didn't think that was unreasonable. It takes a while. Not to mention pins and hair products and stuff to keep my hair up. That was not good enough apparently. Now. So I punched out for a break, brought rubber bands and floral wire, made 8 brands with the hair wire woven in, and stuck them in every direction. My boss saw me and began screaming. I calmly told him my hair wasn't touching my collar. In short, long hair not allowed to touch collar created obnoxious hairdo within regulations. Haha, and that, children, is how we had Edward Scissorhands working in our restaurant for a day until management caved. Good times, good times. I used to work at the Jaws ride at Universal Studios, Florida. Our uniform consisted of a blue shirt, jeans or jean shorts, white socks, and white shoes. The unofficial dress code had a lot of us girls wearing jean shorts and white knee socks. One summer, I ended up working the Jaws ride and the Jungle Cruise at Walt Disney World simultaneously. I love Disney and had always wanted to work there, but I ended up finding it stifling with all sorts of silly and over-the-top rules. At the Jungle Cruise, you had to wear a khaki shirt, khaki shorts or pants, white socks, and brown shoes. One day, I didn't have any normal-sized socks to wear to the Jungle Cruise, so I ended up wearing my white knee-highs, which looked ridiculous with the jungle costume. When I got to work, one of my managers flipped out and told me my socks weren't in compliance with the Disney look, the official policies on how to dress at Disney. He made me roll my socks down. It looked like I was wearing little white life preservers around my ankles and looked more out of place than they looked originally. I was annoyed, so when I went home, I scoured my Disney look booklet for the policies pertaining to socks. All I could find was that socks had to be long enough to cover the ankle bone. There was no maximum height. Heck, I could have worn the white tights under my khaki shorts if I really wanted to. The next day I wore my knee-highs again as a small act of rebellion. The same manager was there and he flipped out. He actually pulled me into the office to write me up, but before he could get me to sign the paperwork, I pulled out my copy of the Disney look and showed him that, while incredibly silly-looking, my socks were perfectly acceptable and that I'd continue to wear them like that. And so I did. I looked stupid, but I didn't care. Working for Disney wasn't a pleasant experience in my opinion, and it was very liberating to know that I could at least wear my socks however the heck I wanted to. My boss told me, "You have to cover Joe this upcoming weekend, both days, since everyone else said no." I said, "How do you know I'll say yes?" And he said, "You have to. There's nobody left." I said, "You're wrong. I'm left, but I quit. Now there's nobody left." He was speechless. His expression was priceless. I stood there about 10 seconds and said, "I'm walking away now," and I left. Thank God this happened the day after I'd secretly secured a better job. Probably one of my fondest memories. When I was in the army, I pulled my car up to an ATM on base to get cash. 4 guys piled out, leaving all doors open. While getting my cash, from somewhere behind me someone says, "You actually drive that frickin' piece of crap? I should call for a tow truck." Without bothering to turn around, I yelled back, "Frick you and your tow truck." I never did see who it was, as he was gone by the time I had my money. Next day, my squad leader calls me aside and asks me if I told my staff sergeant, P, to go F himself yesterday. And I had to admit that yes, I probably had. So I was in trouble. I had 3 other witnesses who were interviewed and signed sworn statements to the fact that I'd told a staff sergeant to go F himself and a tow truck. I was given the opportunity to read the incriminating statements before I made my own, just to point out that there was no point in lying. That's when I found out that only one guy had even known who it was because he was in civilian clothes, not on duty. So my statement detailed an aggressively profane and hostile person in civilian attire, identity unknown to me, whom I found to be acting irrationally and attempted to diffuse further confrontation by, quote, responding jovially in kind fashion. The beauty was that without reading the other statements, I'd have been unable to mesh my version of events so perfectly with the bland facts the others reported. The key point is, under the Uniform Code of Military Justice, there is no such thing as disrespecting a non-commissioned officer, only insubordination, which is very clear about being in uniform. At this point, everyone decided the best thing to do was sweep it under the rug, as Staff Sergeant P had far more to lose than I did, and magically everything went away. P continued to be a jerk to me at every opportunity, so I made a point of yelling, "Hey, P, frick you," whenever I saw him out of uniform. Eventually, my squad leader asked me to stop as a personal favor to him, so I did, but it was fun while it lasted. I went to a Catholic college and they didn't allow members of the opposite gender to spend the night in a dorm room. I made a huge case that they were discriminating against heterosexuals, and that rule miraculously disappeared the next year. I used to work at a lingerie store as an assistant manager, so I had to dress nice and look professional. All the other girls wore huge heels and always ended up complaining about how sore their feet were at the end of their shift, and I always wore flats to avoid having sore feet. They were still nice, stylish shoes, but they didn't have towering heels on them. My manager always used to get mad at me for not wearing heels and tried to claim it was part of dress code. I looked it up and showed her that it didn't say anywhere that I had to wear heels, just that I had to wear acceptable work attire, or something like that, and she tried to tell me it was an out-of-date dress code or something, so I'd tell her that she should get an updated one then. Eventually, she brought head office into the argument, and the provincial manager was trying to tell me to wear heels to work. I told them they'd have to pay me more than minimum wage to ruin my feet. I did not get a raise, and nobody ever told me to wear heels to work ever again. Look, I know some women who like to wear heels whenever they can, but you really can't force employees on a sales floor to rock something that uncomfortable all the time. It's just not cool. You could definitely get Department of Labor on your butt if you put that in your handbook, which is likely why they weren't able to. Okay, on the flip side, I'm the boss enforcing the policy. When I took over the department, the old boss told me that the reason the place looked like crap was because when he asked a sales associate, who was on base pay plus commission, To clean or put up stock, they claimed it wasn't in their job description. The main boss backed them up, calling it a technicality. I pulled out the description and read out, "Other duties as assigned by the manager," on the last line. 2 out of 9 of them quit. My department is now clean and stock is always up. Sales are consistently up. I'm cool with that. I work at Panera, and we were recently told that we had to get non-slip or slip-resistant shoes, else risk being fired. Rather than buying the ugly black kind all of my co-workers got, I got a bright purple pair of Doc Martens. All of the managers gave me the stink eye and asked, "Are those slip-resistant?" "You bet they are, motherfrickers." My buddy and I came into the office on the last day in the job. We found there was no clause against taking the boxes from the shipping department and turning them into armor. The box knights were born and died on that day. No door was safe from our attacks. I worked at a PetSmart 5 or so years ago, in the pet hotel where animals were boarded while their pet parents or owners went on vacation. Everything I did was in the back. No customers ever saw me, just the dogs and kitties. But my witch boss would always get on to me for forgetting my belt. So one day she was particularly mad at me for not having a belt, despite the fact that I was picking that shift up last minute for someone who was sick. I picked up a dog leash, put it through my belt hoops and said, "Well, it appears I now have a belt, don't I?" In the Navy, you must always have a white t-shirt under your uniform. I had a senior chief who constantly checked if your t-shirt wasn't visible and required that it be seen. I checked the uniform regulations and noticed that while in a working uniform, you can wear a V-neck tee. I started wearing them and he took notice as soon as he saw me. I told him that the regs allowed it. He scowled and his only comment was, "One for the blue shirts," and walked away. Then he hammered me for every reg violation he could find. You see, smart Alex never win, at least not in today's Navy. What's the worst way anyone has screwed you over? Not too terrible, but it sucked at the time. My college roommate took care of all the bills, so I just wrote him a check each month for my half, and he paid the rent, electricity, etc. Then one day, some of his friends from out of town visited for the weekend. I come home on Sunday night to find him half-packed. He says he's going with them. This kinda leaves me in the lurch since I don't have another roommate lined up or anything, and I can't afford the place on my own. But frick, I can't stop him from leaving. I suppose I could insist that he pays for another month of rent or something, but it didn't occur to me. So I said whatever and started looking for another roommate the next day. Then later that week, I get the first overdue notice. Then I get a call from the landlord. The F-word hadn't paid any bills in 2 to 3 months, so he was taking my checks, cashing them, and using the money for himself. The previous Christmas, he'd kept a friend's cat while she went home for the break. The cat stayed in his room, which was a disgusting mess. Ants eating the food that he'd left or spewed up, crap-stained underwear everywhere, just a disgusting place, so I felt pretty bad for the cat. After he'd moved out, I went in there and found among the moldy plates and bugs the complete, full and overflowing cat litter box. The cat had crapped and peed in it for 6 weeks or so, and at some point just begun crapping and peeing everywhere else instead. The cat left sometime in January. He had moved out in July. Luckily, I was able to get most everything straightened out, but it was super stressful for a while and I still resent him. You understand that by law, if you ever see this person again, you're required to punch him directly in the crotch, yeah? Duly noted. On the positive side, my next roommate sold a green herb, so I got a lot of it for free. When my dad passed away, his house was put up for sale at a public auction. The auction was set up by a notary. I was present at the auction, but apart from 2 other couples, no one else was. Because of the exceptionally low turnout and me being underage and not in the know about this kind of thing, the price was about a quarter of what the house was worth. It was sold. I now have to pay off a 20-year loan to be able to afford a house, while I could have had one for free. Afterwards, we found out that the notary had set up a deal with the bidding couple and forgot to schedule the sale in the official channels. Basically, no one showed up because all of 5 people knew there would be a binding sale that evening. My advice, if you're dealing with a notary or lawyer and you're not very knowledgeable in the particular field they're working in, get a second opinion. Heck, get a third if you want to be sure, because there are people out there who won't think twice about taking advantage of a 15-year-old who just became a half-orphan. The running commentary after this story was that the notary in question acted in bad faith and could probably be liable for legal action. There was no follow-up on whether justice was served, so I guess we'll never know. I moved out at 17 and had no checking account. Me and my buddy both worked 2 jobs in preparation for college expenses the next year, and we gave cash to the third roommate to handle bills and rent, only to find out months down the road that she had given not a single frick at any point or paid bills or rent for months. We kicked her the F out, and my other buddy fled as well because the cost of making it work was much too high. So I was stuck sorting the entire thing out myself. Goodbye, entire savings up to this point in my life. Hello, 3 jobs, college, and ramen every night for 2 years. I had my best friend's 14-year-old stepsister accuse me of doing the deed with her. She told all of her friends, and then when her parents found out, instead of telling the truth, she told a bigger lie. It's been almost 2 years now, and I'm still fighting the court case. My at-the-time girlfriend's mum offered me a job worth double what I was making now, but she had to interview me to make it look official for HR. I applied, but HR didn't like that I already had a job, so she told me to quit and apply again. So I quit my job and applied again, went in for the interview, and everything was great. My application was processing, and I was totally going to get the job. I didn't get the job. After her and I broke up like 2 years later, she just admitted she was jealous I didn't have any debt, and she wanted me to lose my job so I'd be forced to get a loan, so I could be in debt like her and see how it feels. Don't stick your wang in toasters, or however that saying goes. Anyone else hear alarm bells at HR didn't like that I already had a job? Being claimed as a deduction for being in college while I was in the Persian Gulf circa 1991 and end up being audited by the IRS. Having multiple utilities, gas, electric, phone, opened up in my name while I was in the Persian Gulf, and none of them being paid for, and they were in a totally different state more than once. Having countless credit cards opened up in my name, none of the bills paid, and having a totally destroyed credit rating for 6 years while I was in the Persian Gulf. Thanks, Mum. My mother was and is the epitome of a welfare queen. If there's any angle, trick, or scam she can get away with to get free money from someone else, or most importantly the government, she would not hesitate to lie, cheat, or steal her way into it. I was forced at 5 years old to go to the local store to spend $1 food stamp, before the credit card thing, to get her 95 cents in change so she could get something like cigarettes. I learned the hard way how she operated, and by the time I was in my early 20s, I disowned her. She moved away to Vegas to be near my sister to try and mooch off her. My sister learned after about 5 years, and my mother moved back to where I live in some vain hope that I'd forgotten. I had not. She continues to call every now and then to ask for money or to fix her car, or fix something else. Not even to ask about her grandchildren, of which I have 4 of them with my hot wife. Screw her and screw the horse she rode in on. My wife agrees, as do my children. I've never been on welfare as an adult. I work hard and pay for everything I have, and that of my children. And yes, I'm the 99%. I can only hope that people follow this advice when it comes to their credit and lives. Watch it like a hawk and do not trust anyone. I purchased a car from a buddy. Its engine was bad, but it did have a bunch of custom parts on it I was going to use on my car, which was the same model. I didn't have time to get the parts off, and it sat around for a couple of weeks. His dad got impatient and had the car junked. No one told me this was going to happen, or that there was a timetable. I asked for my money back, and the guy laughed in my face. Screw that guy, I couldn't even go to the small claims court. I never got a bill of sale, never got the car's title. I wholly blame myself for getting ripped off. Expecting people not to screw me, I was a noob at life. My girlfriend tells me she can't leave with me when I'm moving, but wants to come in 1 to 2 months when the semester is over. During this time, we talk every day. I continue to help her pay the bills, etc. 2 months pass and she says she's ready to move. Come and get me. I rent a truck, drive from Colorado to Virginia, and upon my arrival find a note in the door that she had an anxiety attack and is no longer sure she can move. No call to talk about it, no face-to-face, a note on the door. FYI, 4 weeks later she calls saying she was wrong and she loves me. I wished her well and never looked back. I mean, that seems like something done out of fear rather than malice, but yes, she should still have at least talked to you. Hope your life went forward well. I'd been dating a girl for around 9 to 10 months. We were great together, no fights, no drama, just kept it chill and had the time of our life. She got a promotion 2 hours away from where we lived and needed to move. She was nervous about the distance, but I only had a year left in school and I'd join her. Well, moving day came. She was busy working and had been living in the new spot for a week or 2. I grabbed my dad's truck and my band's trailer, and with the help from my parents, we got all of her stuff loaded up and made the journey. Once we'd got everything moved out and put into the new apartment, I gave her a call to see what she'd want to do for dinner and the evening in general. She essentially replied, "I can't do the distance, sorry." I was completely stunned, and to add insult to injury, her stepdad gave me about $30 for gas after hauling all her crap 2 hours away. took care of a very sick girl for 8.5 years. She had no responsibilities whatsoever except to do things that helped keep her healthy. She had everything she wanted and I was happy to provide it. When we broke up, she packed up all of my things, I was out of town, and then proceeded to tell horrible lies about me in a thinly veiled attempt to bully me away from fighting for my belongings. Ironically, I would have given her anything she wanted. All she had to do was ask. Over 3 years later, I'm still stunned by what happened. I was so blind. I'm not looking for sympathy here, but I was sleeping with this guy, always protected. One day, he couldn't find a rubber and convinced me he'd just been tested and was clean and wasn't sleeping with anyone else, and convinced me that we didn't need to use protection. Then he infected me with a transmissible disease. Lesson learned. Trust no one, ever. Parents got divorced, dad kicked my mum out, I was still a senior in high school. I graduate and take a job to try and save up. He decides to get a new girlfriend to spite my mum, talks crap about my mum and lets this new lady bully me. She likes to F with me by smacking a hammer on my bedroom wall really early in the morning, sneaks into my room while I'm at work and steals things from me. I came to my dad begging and crying for him to help me. He calls me crazy, tells me to lock my doors every day in my own house, and accuses my sister of doing it. I catch the girlfriend stealing from me on the last day of work and tell my dad. He kicks me out the very next day. I haven't talked to him in over 2 years and I have nightmares about him. I made him pay me back over $1,300 that she stole from me, or I'd sue her. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. A long time ago, began dating a girl. The girl turned out to be a genius-level sociopath. How do I make this long story short? A member of her family engaged only in manipulations in order to control her, so it's all she learned from growing up. Her IQ was like 140 or higher. She hid it. Seemed normal to everyone. Honestly believes that everyone exists to serve her. Won't ask for things normally. If she wants something, engages in social manipulations. She's deadly patient, too. We were together on and off for a while for years. Some highlights, or lowlights in this case. She manipulated me into selling most of my possessions, then spent the money mostly on substances. Stole my bank account information, bought herself tons of crap, then something for me. The birthday present overdrew my account, starting a chain reaction of crap. I didn't find out till almost a year later. She threw out letters from the bank, but continued writing bad checks from my account. A year later, I almost received felony bad check charges, and I had to hire a lawyer for about $7,000 plus the amount of the bad checks so that I wouldn't have anything on my record. I found out much later that she kept 6 or 7 guys on the line at all times, all for different reasons. She was long-term dating most of us because she thought we would have a future. Future doctors, lawyers, basically anyone who had a shot at making it. A couple were just because they were good to do the deed with, and I found out she went to swinger parties and used to bed about 2 random guys per month. This, of course, totally unknown to me at the time, she had me and everyone else totally fooled. After I finally sorted it out that she was no good and left, temporarily she always roped me back in until I found out the whole truth, she tried and in many cases succeeded to sabotage any relationship I attempted to start. She actually was able to manipulate people into spying on me, manipulate guys into hating me and trying to fight me, and stuff like that. I'd go to parties and random guys would show up and try to kick my butt, cause she had done the deed with them, then told them that I'd hit her, and so on. She even got a couple of girls to seek me out, lie, and get me to go on dates with them so they could report back to her. My phone was blocked and I'd be unable to contact them, and then I'd find out later she had been contacted by my ex and that she had sat her down and lied, saying things like I was married, I had 2 kids, I had transmissible diseases, I was cheating on the girl with the person I was dating. All of course totally untrue, but she'd present convincing evidence, then make friends with the girl and increase the cult of women who hated me. We were off and on because of this, and I didn't know that she was the cause of any of it for years. She was that darn slick. For years and years. I could go on. The craziest part was I looked back at what she said to me during our first date and realized that she was setting up manipulations that very first day that she didn't kick in until sometimes 2 or 3 years later. That crap still blows my mind. It means our first date, she was planning to screw me over in all of these ways. And that, ladies and gentlemen, is what we call a textbook sociopath. I think the worst part is actively preventing the author from escaping and getting his own life. What a piece of work. My mum made me so sick with her behavior that I ended up in the ER as a child Because I was spewing blood for days, I'd developed stress ulcers. Here's just a few of some of the things she did while I grew up there. She always dumped her emotional crap on me, such as how my dad wasn't doing the deed with her anymore, how he didn't please her, and how he didn't love her anymore, and how daddy was so mean. One day while crashing at yet another stranger's house, I overheard her telling my father that she didn't love him anymore and wanted a divorce. She came into bed with me, cried, took off her wedding ring, gave it to me and says, "Daddy doesn't want me to have this anymore, you might as well wear it." Then she put it on my finger. That doesn't sound so bad reading it, but imagine all the thoughts a child would have about wearing her mother's wedding ring after hearing they are getting a divorce, and all of the responsibility placed in that moment. I ended up consoling her to sleep like she was my baby. Story of my life. I'm so sorry people like that have a license to breed, even if it means I wouldn't have existed as a result. That sounds emo, I mean it honestly and seriously. I lived with my father. Mother lied and said she had a steady job and a house, so I was sent to live with her because she had ruined my dad's credit by running up huge debts in his name without his knowledge, causing our house to get foreclosed on. She lived in a van behind an adult club. When all of my things arrived, she simply dumped them on the side of the road and I never saw them again. I spent the next year living like a homeless person at 10 years old, and she bullied me not to tell anyone. Finally, I did and my dad came up and got me, but gosh darn that screwed me up. I was a year behind in school, ill, and I lost all of my stuff. Little personal, but screw it. I just started college and I was living with my grandmother on my father's side. First time staying with this side of the family. Father never cared for me and was incarcerated for his whole life. Needed a place to stay until I got my crap together. Within a month of living there, father was released from prison and came to live there as well. I didn't know he was going to stay there as my grandmother didn't say anything as she knew I didn't want anything to do with him. Anyway, after about another month of awkwardly living under the roof, my father comes home in a car that he got from an auction. He wasn't working at the time and I assumed he was selling substances or had stolen the car. He got arrested again. A friend joined college same time I did and he got his refund. I didn't. After some investigative work, I found out my father took the refund and cashed it, and that's how he got the money for the car. Teed off, I pressed charges, and eventually my grandmother found out about it and kicked me out. I was homeless for a few days. Best friend found out about it and his parents gave me a room. In conclusion, scumbag father took my refund from the grant I received for college and cashed it to buy a car. My ex ceases our activity in the bedroom, citing how it goes against her faith and she feels guilty about it. I'm fine with this and we date for 3 more months. Everything seemed great until the end where she tells me she's 6 weeks pregnant. I'm not very good at math, but I do know 3 months is greater than 6 weeks. I don't see the problem here. Someone else got her pregnant. That's your get-out-of-jail-free card from a crazy person. Within a week of my ex-wife having an affair, she emptied the bank account clean from $10K and moved out of state with her new lover. I found out through his wife and bank account records. Left me with all of the debt and bills. 2 years after the divorce, she opens multiple credit cards in my name and social security number. Thankfully, I have Credit Watch and caught this. Now working on sending her to jail for ID theft and credit fraud. I had a brand new Yamaha R6 and I let my friend try it. He's experienced and wanted a new bike, so he tested my bike. He did a wheelie and of course dropped it. Totaled the bike, blamed me for not having full insurance and didn't pay a cent. I've not talked to him since. But now I have a brand new R1. Never let anyone ride your motorcycle. If you break it, you pay it is what I always tell when friends or family want to ride my motorcycle or car. I quit my job so I can watch my kids while my wife was deployed to Afghanistan. She falls for a contractor over there and dumps me. Now I am jobless, wifeless, and I'd be freaking homeless too if I wasn't living at my dad's house. Oh, and when she returns from Afghanistan, she wants full custody of the boys. And I just turned 30 today. Happy fricking birthday to me. I accidentally broke the small glass door of my closet. Dad came in, saw the shattered glasses on the floor. I told him it was an accident. He pointed his finger at me and yelled, "You're an accident!" I was 11. Just remembering what he said is depressing. This is a terrible thing to say to a kid, and sadly enough, it's distant enough from me that I chuckled a bit at the childishness of the father's response. Bad narrator. Bad. My brother is a contractor, and after offering to handle our whole home renovation, he started a demolition, then decided he was too busy to finish and abandoned the project. He just didn't show up for 2 weeks, and when I contacted him, he showed zero remorse for screwing me over. I paid him almost $20,000 up front as a deposit for work to be completed. The renos started in June. Right now, the master bedroom has no fixtures, there's no doors anywhere, the back wall of the second floor is missing, it's October and getting cold by the way, the bathroom is gutted to the studs, the kitchen has missing walls and there are massive holes in practically every remaining wall. Before just walking off, he'd just not show up for days at a time or only work a couple of hours, then complain he was underpaid the rest of the time. On top of that, due to him having poor credit, I let him use an extension of my credit card with his name on it to purchase materials, which he then proceeded to use to buy gas, food, and booze for himself. When I asked him to stop, he agreed and then continued to do so. I'm now out $50,000 in labor and materials, and now I have to find another contractor. Let me repeat this important fact. This is my brother who's done this. My grandmother did very well in life, and in death left a sizable amount of money to the family, including me. At least that's what I thought, because she showed me a copy of her will about a year before she passed. I get a copy of the will mailed to me by my uncle's lawyer, and it has her handwriting on a new amendment, giving all her estate, her outstanding CDs and investments over to him and him alone to do as he pleases. She was in hospice care for 6 months, and I'm betting money she was high on painkillers when he convinced her to sign the amendment. I still have nothing from her, and he's a Catholic priest. Frick. Spent close to 10 years working for a guy who I considered to be like family for less than minimum wage. I helped him build his business up into a very successful entity. He had promised I would get a raise and my own store to manage. I trusted him because I'd known him since I was a child and he'd never steered me wrong before. I did everything he said, and each time I did something new that he asked for or reached a new goal, he said it wasn't done right and I'd have to do it again. I brought in a good amount of money from his clients and kept them there. Yet he said no when I said I needed more money to survive. I told him I was cutting my hours back because I had to go get another job. He said I was being selfish, and when I took time off to spend with my family and girlfriend, he said I was neglecting my duties. Told me I needed to quit or start over with reduced pay and no title. I quit. Soon after, a number of clients left as well. His wife, who ran the books, is now leaving him and his other employees have left as well. Clients continue to leave on a regular basis. The place was my life for a long time. It was my dream to have my own location. He promised it to me, but screwed me over. I lost 10 years of my life. Best thing that ever happened to me, though. What's your best example of sweet, sweet karma? One morning I stopped at Dunkin' Donuts on my way to work for some coffee. It had already been a not-so-great morning, so I wasn't in the best mood. The guy a couple of people ahead of me got a large iced coffee, which is 32 ounces at Dunkin' Donuts, and he ended up being parked next to me in the parking lot. So I'm getting in my car and happen to glance over and notice that he's in his car, but his enormous coffee is on the roof of his car. So I waved at him and pointed to his roof. He looked at me, and for whatever reason, his reaction was to flip me off. I don't know if he thought I was making some kind of rude gesture or if I was just a weirdo or what. But I got to watch him pull out of his parking space. His coffee stayed put while he backed out, but as soon as he braked to shift gears, that thing just dumped all down his front windshield. It was honestly one of the most gratifying moments of my life. Happened to me with a bucket of KFC. I thought the girl that was gesturing at me was just saying hi. Next thing I know, chicken was raining down my windshield. I picked up some of it. If it didn't hit the concrete, it's still good to eat, right? Was driving home slowly during the aftermath of a major ice storm. Dallas and Fort Worth don't have salt trucks or plows, so there was a thick layer of ice on all the highways, which are mostly elevated so they take ages to thaw if the temperature stays low. A guy in a sports car blows past me and a bunch of other people just trying to stay on the road. He's changing lanes really quick and speeding up and generally just being a massive jerk on a dangerous road. Couple of miles later, the guy's car is spun out, still upright, and stuck in an icy ditch. He was fine, standing next to the also fine car, spitting mad. So I'm glad he wasn't hurt, but man, did he deserve to end up in a ditch for driving like that. Seriously, we get that you might know how to drive on ice in the Arctic, but Texas doesn't have the infrastructure you're used to. The roads aren't built for ice. There are no plows. We aren't rusting our cars with salt over the 2 days every 4 years that ice is over. It just ain't the same. The kids in my neighborhood, including me, liked to toss snowballs at passing cars. One day a guy in a purple pickup truck drove by and we lit him up with 4 or 5 of the little snowballs. About 2 minutes later, the same truck comes back up the road, revving the engine loud. He zooms by and his arm comes out of the window holding a snowball about the size of a soccer ball. Somehow he nailed the neighbor kid right in the chest with that snowball, and the kid crumbled to the snow from the impact. We heard him laughing his butt off as he drove away. I never saw the purple truck again. Don't throw snowballs at cars, it's more dangerous than it seems. For the drivers. I still feel like a tool when I remember, even though I was only 11 or so. This is so goddamn funny and perfect karma. I bet that guy was smiling for the rest of the day. I know I would have been. Just try not to think about the possibility that you hurt anyone. A few years ago, I was out at a pub with some friends for my birthday. A few of them are sitting outside and my best friend coughed. This apparently infuriated a girl sitting nearby, and she had her boyfriend just start beating the crap out of my best friend. My best friend was female, by the way, and her boyfriend. My best friend is a little scrapper, so she can hold her own in a fight if she needs to, but the guy is the one throwing the majority of the punches. Police obviously got called, and the guy legs it before they arrive. The police took a few statements from my friends and start trying to find the guy in order to arrest him. But even after a few weeks, they still hadn't found him. Best friend gets a call from the police station soon after to say that they'd arrested the guy who'd beaten up her and her boyfriend. Turns out they hadn't been able to find him because while he was running away from the pub that night, he'd tried to jump a high fence, fallen, and hit his head, resulting in a 6-week coma. Best part is that after being in a hospital for 6 weeks, he got arrested. Even better, head trauma probably ensured he remembered very little about the night. The guy probably had no idea why he was being arrested. I don't know, man. If you're the kind of guy to start throwing punches at other people on command, you probably have a pretty good idea of why you're being arrested. Me? Sir, your brake pads are worn down and your rim is worn. There's also a crack in your head tube. The customer? I just need the puncture fixed. Okay, sure, it's not safe to ride though, you understand? It's been fine for years. I proceed to fix the puncture, the customer rides away and not even 5 meters from the door the rim collapses under the pressure, and he goes over the handlebars. It's been fine for years though, right? People are stupid. Some of the crap I see is crazy. We have this one customer who's an engineer, he actually is, and he runs his bike to death, then refuses to spend money until something fails. Latest thing was the handlebars. Engineers can be especially dumb. I have classmates who are incredibly gifted when it comes to academic work but have zero life skills or common sense. A guy I know almost burned his room down when he set fire to his curtains using a hot plate because he didn't know he was supposed to keep an eye on the food he was cooking. This kid I would go to school with. Met him my freshman year and could tell right away he was a huge idiot. He would constantly brag about all the substances he did, and he would call girls fat and stupid C-words right to their faces. He even hocked a loogie on one of my good friends who tried to get into his fraternity's party. This kid is also 6'3" and 220, so unless you're that big, there's nothing you can really do. Well, just last week he called some girl fat, and when she got up in his face, he knocked her out and literally body-slammed her friend coming to her aid. The girls went to the police and told them everything. When they went to his house to arrest them, there was a glass pipe and clear view. So through reasonable cause, they searched his room. They found a ton of Xanax, white snow, and green herb, so not only is he going to jail for attacking the girl, but also felony substance charges with intent to sell. Lesson to be learned, karma is a B word. I used to rent my sister's house. She moved out with her boyfriend, now husband, and my brother and I rented the house from her. We were in our early 20s and boys, and the place was never going to be immaculate, but we certainly didn't trash it. My sister has somewhat unreasonable cleanliness standards, however. She inspects the place one day while we're at work and flips out, kicks us out 2 days before Christmas. The next tenants absolutely destroyed her house, tore up floorboards and spray painted the walls. Destroyed it. We were messy, but would never have done that. There was no apology. Our relationship was very rocky for years afterwards, hardly ever speaking to one another. I think in a way she blamed us for the damage, like a "if you didn't make me evict you, this never would have happened" sort of way. But we had experiences to draw from our pasts, where not talking to family has resulted in unfinished business when a family member dies, and she's always been more like a mum to me as there's quite a large age gap between us. We sort of just started hanging out again, mainly for my nephew, as I was his main male role model for years, and eventually we became friends again. Though I'm a little salty with her at the moment because we were supposed to see the new It movie together and she's gone and seen it without me, I'll get over it. And no, we don't talk about it, it's not funny yet. The moon landing conspiracy theorist who followed Buzz Aldrin until Buzz punched him right in the face. Why is it always so gosh darn satisfying when you see the girlfriend be like, "Just ignore him, he's stupid, just ignore him," and then they go too far and she just kind of moves to the side, giving the signal to punch him. One of my former bosses, he was a hotel manager for a corporate company, worked off salary and never had to clock in. The guy was as dumb as rocks. If you were new and had a question, he'd literally only say, "Look at the manuals." Never anything else. He was present maybe 2 hours of his entire week. He never came in, somehow never got caught after 10 years of working there. Well, the guy got canned 3 days after I quit. It all caught up with him eventually. I've heard 3 years later and he's still struggling to find a job. When you've held something down for 10 years and get fired, it doesn't look good. Yep, some of my best managers have had the same statement in new jobs: there are no stupid questions. And while that isn't necessarily true, it's a great thing for nervous new hires to hear if you can back it up. A dude on a bike somehow caught a ball kicked at him and he ran away with it. I came back to a restaurant 1 day a week I used to be head chef at after I left the industry. They were short-staffed and willing to pay me an absurd hourly rate. First day back, the new head chef, who didn't know I'd worked there before, literally screamed at me and told me, "You, bossy C-words like you are why I treat women like crap." The restaurant owner happened to be dining at the bar when this happened, and the guy in question was promptly fired. I hope he's miserable. Haha. Vile sexism aside, how dumb do you have to be to do that? It was later revealed to me that he has a very severe alcohol dependence and problem. I think that accounts for the volume, at least. Back when I was washing dishes at age 16, this one waiter would just throw plates and silverware into the bus tub I used for soaking, particularly caked on or messy food. The crap would splash all over me every time he threw it in there. Eventually, I just shot him with the industrial dishwashing hose, and he got sent home because he couldn't wait tables soaking wet. It is well known in every restaurant I've ever worked in, 10 years in the industry, that if you splash the dishwashers while putting crap in the tubs, you could expect a spraying the next time they saw you. Don't mess with the kitchen. Dish pit counts as the kitchen. Not me, but a friend of mine did this. During the fall, his neighborhood would put bags of leaves out on the curb for a pickup. These punk kids would always drive over the bags, making a big mess in the street. So one day, he takes a stack of cinder blocks and hides them in the bags. He said he could fit 8 blocks in each bag, and then fill up the rest of the bag with leaves. The kids drive by, aim for the bags, boom, big damage to their cars. He said that they stopped their silly behavior after that. Man, I had a substance dealer live across the street from me, and his customers were some of the biggest jerks I've ever seen. They hit my mailbox, garbage cans, completely drove through my ditch. The city maintained cutting the ditches, so of course the grass there was always waist high. I lined my ditch with huge, as in 200 pounds each, slabs of stone. First day literally removed one guy's bumper and incapacitated a different car. Easily damaged 15 cars a week. My first-year college roommate cheated on each of the 3 girlfriends he had that year. I'd bet my house that he continued to do this all through college and beyond after I stopped living with him. Just last week, I found out from a mutual acquaintance that he'd discovered his fiancée had been cheating on him about a month before their wedding. I mean, you had that coming, you idiot. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I tried to bully a kid by hitting his bike with mine, and I went right over my handlebars. I respect that you'd come into this thread and be like, I was the jerk. My friend, I'll call him Zeke for convenience, and I will go to this old dock from time to time just to hang out and talk because the area was beautiful, and there's an old building where an event site used to be. So we just dig through the massive lost and found or spray paint some hip cool art, yo. Memes mostly. Well, one time Zeke brought a friend who was on Snapchat or something on Zeke's phone the whole time yelling about some stupid breakup, like screaming. He got aggressive because we told him to chill. Well, Zeke wanted his phone back eventually, but the friend refused to give it, because that friend was a prick. The friend proceeded to drop then catch his phone over the 30 feet deep water. I grabbed the phone and calmly said that was stupid. The friend whipped out his own phone, but he preferred Zeke's, I'm still not sure, and said, "Watch this." He dropped the phone and missed the catch, and it sunk into the pure brown water, descending quicker than the kid could open his mouth to scream. My friend was dating a guy and she told me he had a 500 horsepower Mustang. I went for a ride with him. He later totaled that one, doing 40 miles per hour in the rain with traction control off, with drag radials, and he got a newer one with 700 horsepower. I turned down a ride in it and talked my buddy out of it. The guy had skills but nothing resembling judgment. It passed traffic at 140 miles per hour with 3 passengers. As of Friday, that's now his 700 horsepower coffin. Well, that got darker than I was expecting on this thread. I definitely had friends growing up that I wouldn't get in the car with in this day and age. Not sure if this happens to any of them, but I hope not. I came from a pretty large school that was very competitive about academics. I finished 51 out of 650, and I was very happy with that. The valedictorian, who I barely knew, said to me the week of the graduation that she didn't know how she didn't have more competition. High school is so easy. Then she said, like, take you for example. You're pretty smart, but you set yourself back in life by not trying to be valedictorian. Like, you couldn't get into an Ivy League with your rank, and my valedictorian title gets me in wherever. On top of that, my best friend was getting paid to write essays for people, and I knew Miss Pompous valedictorian brought many from her. I mostly forgot about this girl and moved on with my life. I graduated college, moved back to our hometown, and got a good-paying job. The first weekend back, I ran into her. She works as a cashier at Target. You bet I went through her line to say hi. I sincerely wish her all the success in the world now, but it also was really good to see reality found her. Don't you love it when a big fish in a small pond gets introduced to the ocean and realizes how small they actually are? You're not hot crap if you can't swim against the ocean currents. How good did this feel? Hey, insert valedictorian name, how are you? Yeah, I just moved back to town and I got this great job at amazing company. How about you? Are you working here to pay for uni? No? This is your full-time job? Oh, okay, that's cool. Valedictorian my butt. In the mid-2000s, my sister passed away from cancer. The entire school knew about it because she had been able to attend the school for weeks. She had to stop shortly after, but everyone knew we were siblings. Anyway, I had this bully that tormented me fairly often, mostly stupid kid stuff. The day after, he told me in the lunch line, "I'm glad your sister died." That was the first and only time I punched someone first. I broke his nose and got a 10-day vacation courtesy of zero tolerance. When my friends and I dumped bottles of glue into this other kid's snow boots in 6th grade because earlier that day he nailed me in the face with an ice ball and laughed at me while my face bled. His boots were completely ruined, and he couldn't go outside for a while. I don't remember the teachers doing anything about it because we didn't have security cameras at the time, and the kid was a little crapbag, so they probably didn't care. Today at lunch, I kept telling my preschool student to stop looking under the table because he was going to hit his head. Halfway through my 3rd repetition, he banged his head on the table. He stopped. I and my parents were on the highway, and we were at a part that didn't have passing lanes. I think it might have been a national park or something, and this guy kept on tailgating us. He almost nudged our car as well, and since he couldn't pass us, we were stuck like that until we passed the park. The guy seriously almost caused us to crash our fricking car, with how ridiculously dangerous he was driving. He passed us eventually, and about 5 minutes later, we saw him pulled over by a cop. There's a video of some D-bag in a truck annoying a lady on a highway. She's filming him, and he very aggressively pulls up beside her and flips her off before purposefully cutting her off. But when he slams on the gas to get out in front of her, he loses control of his truck and immediately wrecks it while the lady continues to film. God, that felt good. One of my co-workers' kids was being super crappy to the animals. We train horses and take people for trail rides, as well as have a crapload of farm animals. He was chasing the older horses and the chickens with a stick, and they were all just kind of putting up with it. Now my horse and the milk cow were chilling together in the corner, and he tried to hit the cow with a stick. And oh boy, neither of them were having any of that. My horse swung his head at the little piece of crap and showed him his teeth. He would never actually bite or touch him, but he knows how to look scary as all get out when he wants. And the cow head-butted the kid into the dirt while the horse had him distracted. Guess what? He has a lot more respect for animals now, and he stopped trying to hit them with sticks. For those of you wondering why we didn't make him stop, we figured he'd hear it better from a 1,000-pound animal. Non-commissioned officer in the Royal Navy. A few years back, had a lazy officer, a pilot, doing my report for the year. He never filed it and my promotion went back at least a year because of that. I later heard he got promoted to lieutenant commander. Turns out he was faking his medical documents so he could keep flying as he was no longer medically fit. Discharged from the Navy, no pension and a criminal record. If he was honest, he would have got a medical discharge and a medical pension. I was promoted in the end, but it took longer than it should have. 2 of my friends got involved in a love triangle. One did the deed with the other's wife, then told him about it because that's what a real friend would do, and then after a few random incidents, this butthole decides he wants the wife as his new girl. He calls the other friend and tells him he's coming to kill him and take his wife. Highly drunk, by the way, to which he was told, "If you come here, I'm gonna crush your skull with a bat." He proceeded to walk for hours to get there to do what, do you ask? To get the crap beat out of him with a bat. Didn't die, but was severely beaten, and it took surgeries to fix things. including a shoulder replacement and completely removing about 6 inches on his humerus. Investigators said they estimate he was hit between 35 and 50 times. There's a strange scale of trying to do the right thing, failing to continue to do the right thing, effing around and finding out here. What an interesting story of self-discovery it was. This was years back in high school, but I remember this football jock who was your typical butthead to everyone just because he was stronger, cooler, and all that jazz. He also did substances which he thought made him cool. Him and I didn't get along well, even though we were on the same team, because he loved bullying people and I'd tell him to F off. Anyways, it was his dream to join the army and become a ranger out of high school. On grad night, our school went to Disneyland, and he never showed up for graduation. I found out later that he tried sneaking substances into Disneyland on grad night, and since he had turned 18 recently, they booked him as an adult. Can't exactly become a ranger with a record of dealing hard substances to minors. Felt like that was payback for all the bullying and nonsense he pulled for years. The company I worked for got bought out, and one of our executives basically sold many of us out with demotions, firings, etc. It was bad enough that it was happening. But this guy just wouldn't be honest and candid with us during the process. At some point, people got wise to the situation and there were mass resignations. The executive that had sold us all out got fired one day due to his inability to retain the team, and left the building with tears in his eyes. I was at the beach and this lady was sunbathing in front of me with one of those aluminium tanning sheets. She had her leftover food in a styrofoam container wrapped in a plastic bag, and a couple of seagulls were beginning to grab at it. About 6 or 7 were sort of pecking at it, and I got up to shoo them away. More had congregated, and I tapped her shoulder to let her know what was up. She looked at me, rolled her eyes, and literally waved her hand, dismissing me, and laid back down. The 6 or 7 seagulls had doubled, and I once again got up, shooed them away, and alerted her to the upcoming disaster. She once again rolled her eyes and was clearly not to be bothered by a concerned beachgoer. At this point, I was mildly hallucinating at the edible I'd taken earlier, and said, "Frick it," and watched about 50 seagulls slaughter her leftovers. She got up in a frenzy, birds and food everywhere. Never have I laughed and pointed so hard at a person in my life. It was uncontrollable. Tears were streaming down my face as she got up, terrified and shocked at what had just happened. It was so satisfying. I don't think I've laughed harder at anyone else's expense since. Just thinking about it now brings back wonderful feelings. How have you got a repeat marketing or scam phone call off your back? I got a call from the Social Security Administration. I asked for the company's address, and he paused and said, New York, America. I took a call from the "I hear you've had an accident that wasn't your fault" call that I get about once a week. It's automated at first, but as soon as I said yes, I got put through to someone. I spent 20 minutes explaining how someone reared into my lane and crashed into me, and it wasn't my fault. At the end, when they asked me for details on the damage, I explained that they'd bent the handlebars a bit, but the bicycle was mostly okay. They hung up on me, and I haven't heard back from them in about a month. I always answer, "Hello, Federal Bureau of Investigation, Telemarketing Fraud Department, how may I help you?" For some reason, they always hang up on me. Yeah, got a call from the duct cleaning people. I told them I don't have ducts, I have geese. They just hung up on me and haven't bothered me since. I told them that I was a member of their branch, a floor above them, and that they misdialed. They said, "Frick you," and hung up. I didn't get a call back from them for a few months. Oh man, this is great. I think I'm gonna have to finally start picking up on these idiots and take my own spin on this. Let them go through whatever little spiel they have, add in a little giggle here and there, and finally just start laughing and tell them it's James or Cindy down the hall, and ask them out on a date. I asked them for their social security, and they hung up on me. Whack. Haha, I just did the same. I answered all worried and said, "So, I can borrow yours for a while instead, right?" They got angry and hung up on me. No calls back though. The thing that really gets them is wasting their time. They're getting paid to make calls, so the longer you keep them on, the better. One thing I like to do is start rambling a story that goes nowhere, like Grandpa Simpson does on The Simpsons. You know, "Survey? Yes, I've taken some surveys in my time. Why, I even worked on one. Now I think it was in '06. Or was it '07? No, it must have been '06, because that was the winter I crashed my Buick. God, I missed that car. It was such a beautiful shade of green like the jungle. Now, I've been to the jungle, and boy, do they have mosquitoes." You know, as a working voice actor, I can't help but feel like I'm really missing out on some opportunities to have some fun with these people, instead of my usual frustration. A pity that most of mine seem to be robots, but oh well. I'm sure another scammer will call again since it's just an act that all of them do, but I got a social security scam call. They told me they'd found 22 pounds of white snow in a Toyota Camry with some blood in the front seat because they always say that exact line. I responded, "Oh my god, that's terrible. So are you telling me that this was not you who left the car there?" "No, that was me, but I had 30 pounds of white snow in that car. Are you telling me that 8 pounds went missing?" So he was very confused and I was accusing him of stealing it. Then he started swearing at me until he hung up. "No, it was a silver Toyota. Wait a minute, is the body still in the trunk?" The last call I had was the standard, "You've been in a car accident." I had a little chat with them, but they hung up once I told them I'd been decapitated in the crash. I always hit the button to speak with a person or get more info, or sometimes they call with a live person to begin with. I put on my most seductive voice and say, "Hey baby, how you doing?" They usually hang up immediately. If not, my next response to whatever they say is, that sounds really hot. What are you wearing?" Pretty close to 100% hang up and just don't call back. This guy keeps calling me, telling me that there's a warrant out for my arrest and the cops are looking for me. Cool, I'm like, "What town do I live in? What town do you live in?" The guy gets teed off and hangs up. I crap you not, he calls me back in a week. I'm like, "Oh my god, it's you again. Did you figure out what town I live in yet?" And he says he fricking hates me and hangs up. Never got another call. I tried to troll a guy who was clearly calling people to get their bank account information by saying they were giving away money to help college students. He was from India and was dedicated to his job. I tried to tee him off for about 30 minutes, but he kept interrupting me and I eventually told him to F off and hung up the phone. He kept cutting me off and saying, "But my friend, my friend." I got a call, they started reeling off this massive script. Finished probably after 2 minutes of solid talking, and I politely sat through the whole thing. I paused and said, "Sorry?" She said, "Again?" and started the whole script again from the start. Another 2 minutes solid talk wall later and I said, "Sorry?" This time there was a bit of frustration in her voice. "Again?" And once again did the whole 2 minutes again, aggressively this time. "Sorry? F this," and the call ended. Just play dumb and eat up their time. They're playing a numbers game and don't want to spend 30 minutes with someone that gives them nothing. In that 30, they would rather get shot down 20 times and maybe find one old lady that they can trick. My grandfather got fed up with telemarketers one time in the late 90s and early 2000s. His response? He stayed on the phone with the guy for over an hour, acting super interested in the guy's sales pitch. He had them so convinced that they actually sent a sales representative to our house. Grandpa then proceeded to string this poor idiot along for another few hours while he sat there smoking cigarettes and constantly changing the conversation. Then, once the guy finally thought they'd come to some sort of business agreement, my grandpa flat out admitted that he was never actually interested and told the guy to F off and leave the property. Never mess with a bored old man with a lot of time on his hands. Not that I want to sprint towards the grave, but I can't wait to be retired and have nothing to do. I may actively seek this crap out. I unplugged the landline. It was either that crap or my father-in-law, so win-win. Answer the phone, connect to an agent, mute your phone, and carry on with what you were doing. They quickly take you off their dialers when you waste their agent's time. I'm mostly the same, but I've stepped it up. Answer, connect, mute the same, but when a person picks up and starts speaking, I rapid-fire press numbers on my keyboard until they hang up. My favorite response to it has been, "Beautiful song, sir. We won't call again." They did call again, though. We don't have a receptionist at our office. Everyone is responsible for answering the phone, but it seems like I'm the only person willing to answer the GD phone here, which means I get all the spam calls. I recently started just deliberately annoying them and playing music on the keypad, and it actually helped. It's funny to see which spammers will hold out the longest. The longest I've had someone on mute was 4 minutes before they hung up. The narrator is almost getting sad that he doesn't have a lot of telemarketers in the country that he lives in to experiment these kinds of shenanigans on. We get maybe one a month here. I've got one unknown caller that likes to cuss me out for leaving him on mute, to see if I'll take him off mute to yell at him. I think he just wants to sample my voice. A few weeks ago, he just left a voicemail saying, "John, you're a prick." I'm curious as to what his scam is, but not curious enough to actually engage. This is a landline. One phone in my house is just an old Plantronics headset. Doesn't have caller ID, but allows me to answer with it already muted. The only time I pick up without a known caller ID is using this headset, just for entertainment. Sometimes I'll unmute it long enough to say hello, then go back to mute. If I hear the call center boop tone, then I can just hang up at that point. My friend speaks English, Spanish, and Russian. He would just start switching randomly between languages, and each language had a different personality. He would confuse them into total submission. They rarely called back. Got called that there was virus on my computer. Told them this was impossible, as I throw my computer in the river, so the police couldn't get any evidence on me. Haven't heard from them since. I love these guys. I have a gaming keyboard with a bunch of extra keys off to the left that are bound to similar keys on the normal keyboard. SteelSeries stealth marks, such as 1 through 9, WASD, Control-Alt-Space, and a handful of others. So many times I get people upset because when they ask me to look at the lower left corner of my keyboard and ask me to tell them what key is to the right of the control key, I answer the C key, because that's what's there on my computer. Completely throws them so far off their script that they implode and normally start cussing me out. I tell the Microsoft ones that they couldn't possibly be real because I pirated my copy of Windows. Sometimes we get down to the tangent of them knowing who I am and that they're sending the police to arrest me if I don't pay up. Either that or I play super dumb and ask if they're talking about that there invisible web machine. I used to be a cable guy and I can't tell you how many times I had to explain to a customer that their computer was not in fact the internet, and that their computer not working didn't mean that their internet was out. I try to pass on that frustration to people who really deserve to feel it. My dad and I were on a road trip with his phone connected to the speakers via Bluetooth. He gets a call about this guy wanting to give my dad a credit card with some high credit for just $1. My dad knew this was a ploy to get his credit card details. He led him on for at least an hour until my dad just goes, "Nah, I don't have $1 to spare, that's too much for my poor self." The scammer was so mad he was yelling, "But sir, it's only $1! My dad just laughed and hung up. Good times. We laugh about it still. The phone scam that puts you through to someone who says you've been in an accident no longer calls me because I just kept telling them an elephant ran out in front of my car and it was a hit and run. Didn't get the plate. My wife got a call from Microsoft. I acted confused and asked if they were from a help desk or something because I'm on my work laptop. After a bit, I told them I work for a big tech company, and if my laptop is having problems, it should be HR calling me. They panicked and hung up, pretty sure she hasn't gotten another one since then. It didn't help that she didn't own a laptop, she only had her company one, and that mine was a Mac, so we literally didn't own a Windows box at the time. My mom has ruined one of these calls unintentionally. I run Ubuntu on her laptop that she only uses for mail and online banking, and I'm the one who maintains it. She got one of those calls and actually talked to them for a good 10 minutes. She really tried to follow the instructions and everything. Finally, the caller asked which version of Windows she was running. Ubuntu? Ubuntu. And they hung up and never tried again. My wife says, "I'll just pass you on to my technical person," and hands me the phone. The last time I kept a guy on the line for about 5 minutes, playing dumb and trying to find the start menu. After a while, I let him off the hook and told him it was a Mac, and he dropped the call. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I would receive a specific one 9 times out of 10. Your car warranty is about to expire. Press 1 if you'd like to be connected to a representative. So I would oblige and wait for someone to come on the line and say, make, model, and year of your vehicle, which I usually followed up with 2013 Hasbro ATV, or 2017 Little Tykes Tricycle, or something of that nature. I must have become a famous caller because they only called maybe 6 times after I started doing it, and they always started with, "Oh, look who it is." Eventually, it just stopped. I assume it's because they were tired of wasting their time on someone who was wasting their time. I usually reply with, "What car are you talking about?" And they'll say, "Can you confirm the year, make, and model?" And I just keep asking, "What car are you talking about?" They hang up every time. Sometimes I get snippy and petty and say, "Well, you're calling about my car's extended warranty," which means you clearly know what car I own, so you tell me. They hang up, of course. I've done that with the credit card ones. Will this be for the Visa or MasterCard? You called me and you don't know what the card is? One time they called me on my work number, asked for the person who had the number before me, who retired before I joined, and said that his car was expired, giving what was as far as I know the correct make and model. When I informed them that said coworker had retired and could no longer be reached at this number, so they should stop calling, they informed me that my vehicle's warranty was about to expire as well, even though they had no idea who I was. I hung up on them at that point. I mean, on the last one, you can at least appreciate their can-do attitude to the situation, if not their intelligence. My main question is, how do people not just laugh at them when they realize what's going on? About once or twice a week, I'd get the Microsoft support phone call. For about 3 weeks, I would hang up on them. After about a month of this, I decided to screw with them. I let them give their line about how my computer is sending them errors, blah blah blah. I kept responding with, interesting, okay, fascinating, and other platitudes. When they said they wanted to connect to my computer, I told them this would be difficult. They asked why. I told them they called the server room for the Pentagon. I do not think I've heard anyone hang up more quickly. Even better, be an engineer at Microsoft and receive one of those calls while at work. Put them on speaker and proceed to mess with them with all your coworkers listening. Then bust out, "Oh, so I'm in the building on Central Campus in Redmond. Which building are you in? What's your alias so I can look you up?" Sadly, they stopped calling us after that. After I had my first child, I kept getting calls about how the netting they used for my hernia surgery was being recalled and that I could get a lot of money if I took the time to talk to them. I told them that I'd never had that surgery and I think it must be a mistake. They asked if I was in the hospital on a given day. I said yes, because I'd had a baby, not because I'd had any surgery. It looks like their records are mistaken and to please take me off the list. I thought that was that. I got a phone call 3 times a week for months afterwards, having the exact same conversation each time. I would say, take me off this list right now and I want to speak to your manager. They would hang up. I could tell it was the same guy. Finally, after almost a year of this crap, I was sitting in the car waiting for an appointment. I was pretty early and had a lot of time to kill. They call me again. Me? You've made a mistake. Take me off this list and I want to talk to whoever's in charge. He hung up. I realized that I actually had their number on my phone, so I called him. I have your number now. I'm not going to stop calling until you let me talk to your manager. He said, "Ma'am, please do not call this number again, as it's my personal cell phone." Oh man, it was so on when he told me this. I repeated to call his number over 20 times. Each time he answered, I said the same thing. "I have your number now. I'm not going to stop calling you until you let me talk to your manager or take me off this list for real." At one point, he even said I was mistaken and knows I had hernia surgery. After what felt like the millionth call, a woman answered. "Why do you keep harassing one of my employees?" "I've told your employee that he has the wrong person and to take me off the list. He refuses to believe me and has been calling me 3 times a week for the past 8 months. "Ma'am, he is calling you because you're on our list and he can help you." Pretty much saying the same crap the other guy was saying, but with a really crappy attitude, like it's me who's the butthole here. "I have his number now, and if you want me to stop, you need to take me off this list and never call again. If you don't, I'll call him every minute I have the chance. I spend a lot of time in my car waiting for clients to meet me. So, you guys will be hearing from me a lot." "All right, ma'am, I took you off the list. Please don't call again." Click. And they never called again. Saying something like, "Hello there, you're speaking with sales representative from pleasure.com. What kind of adult toys do you want to order?" Really scream it at them, by the way. It always works for me. "Welcome to Jim's House of Pleasure. You got the dough, we got the hoe." I used to get a lot of unsolicited calls from a company who could sort out my debt. I got a call from them one day when I wasn't doing much at home, so I decided to have some fun. I gave a false name, false address, which they couldn't find in their system. I convinced them it was a new build eventually. I then went through my debts meticulously. Had them waiting while I found the paperwork, etc. Some of the debts were for my transition, and then reverting back because I'd changed my mind. 30 to 40 minutes later, I had over £300,000 in debt, and was able to pay up to £4,000 per month to clear it up with them. The woman on the phone got her boss because it was such a big contract, and when the boss lady got on the phone, I told her I made it all up. I kid you not, she told me I was wasting their time and that I shouldn't do that, and then hung up on me. Never heard from them again. I get a call from a random pharmaceutical company saying that my supply of bedroom performance pills were ready for pickup. I told them that I had a complaint regarding the medication. I said that I only took half a pill and now half of my pee-pee was hard. Now my base is hard, but the tip was soft and I was teed off. I kept going on this rant for about a minute or so and they hung up. Happened twice and my friends and I are still laughing. So what the narrator is learning here is that a lot of these calls are based on saying that the recipient has an incoming order that they definitely didn't make in order to get the person to give up their details in order to cancel the order. If so, pretending that you're indeed a repeat customer who's already received multiple orders and recognizes the company is a terrific act of trolling. I always just say, Bill's orphanage, you make 'em, we take 'em. They usually don't call back after that. Steve's crematorium, you kill 'em, we grill 'em. I answer the phone as Detective So-and-so, and then I ask them who they are and why they called the number in a very stern and cop-like manner. Then I ask them where they are and act like I'm giving the information to someone else who is contacting Interpol. I ask a few more questions about their relationship to the number and advise anyone who's not already hung up that they should stay put and wait for Interpol to arrive for interrogations. It stopped calls to my classroom. I just scream for a solid 30 seconds. Whenever they intro with, "This is so-and-so on a recorded line," I always politely say, "I do not consent to being recorded or monitored." Something along those lines. It's always fun how they get so flustered and aren't sure what to do. They usually hang up and don't ever call again. I don't even know if they need my consent to record me, but it seems to work. Answer the phone with, "Ghostbusters, what do you want?" and get increasingly exasperated when they don't have a legit paranormal issue. It helps to loudly chew on gum. Not me, but my grandma. After Grandpa died, she started getting phone calls in the evening from an insurance agent trying to sell her insurance for her husband. She's very polite, but she always says, "No thank you," before she hangs up the phone. This goes on for almost a week. Grandma is really beside herself about these calls, and she tells my mum how upset she is with this man. One evening, I guess the guy was really impatient with her, and before Grandma could say, "No thank you," the agent asked, "But ma'am, you need your husband to be covered. Don't you care if he's covered?" To which she promptly replied, "He's covered with 6 feet of dirt. Is that enough coverage for you?" The man hung up and didn't call again. Grandma was a really nice lady, and she was embarrassed that she lost her temper with that guy. My sisters and I loved that story. I got a call from one of those, "You've been selected for a free trip to the Bahamas" scammers. I told them that I couldn't do that right now. "Oh no, sir, you don't understand. It's free. You just need to—" No, I understand that, sir. It's just, I'm currently under federal investigation and I can't leave the country. "Oh, I'm terribly sorry, sir. I'll remove your number from our list. Have a wonderful day." Click. I always interrupt early and say, "Ma'am, I want to hear all about your product. But first, let me tell you about my personal savior, our Lord Jesus Christ." They usually disconnect before I get to the word Christ. "I'm ringing about your recent accident." "Oh, you mean when I ran over all those children?" I'm sorry? I know, I shouldn't have gone flat out in a school zone. Okay, Did they figure out which heads went with which bodies? Click. Which mysteries for the ages have finally been solved? The McStay family disappearance and murders. In February of 2010, the McStays, a family of 4, seemingly vanished from their home, abruptly. A carton of eggs was left open on the counter and the family dogs were still outside in the backyard. The scene was eerie and complicated because the home the McStays lived in was in the process of being renovated, so a neat and orderly home wasn't the norm at this stage. It appeared there was missing furniture and the usual mess that comes with construction, some freshly painted or redone surfaces mixed with older versions. From the outside, it appeared the family just took off. Neighbor had surveillance that captured what appeared to be the bottom of the family SUV leaving the driveway. Since they were living in California, the border to Mexico wasn't far, and authorities found footage of what appeared to be the McStays walking into Mexico with their 2 little boys in tow. The family SUV was found abandoned in a mall parking lot near the Mexico border. 3 years passed before the bodies of the McStays were found buried in shallow graves in the California desert. The bodies appeared to be in advanced decomposition and there were signs of blunt force trauma. A sledgehammer was also found buried with one of the bodies. Chase Merritt, a business partner to Joseph McStay, was arrested and charged with their murders in November 11, 2014. His trial was delayed for years until 2019. He was sentenced to death. Motive? Chase had a gambling addiction and had been and continued embezzling money from the business. His DNA was found in the McStays' abandoned vehicle. He bludgeoned his business partner and their family to death for money. The disappearance of Antoine de Saint-Exupéry, author of The Little Prince, who was also a French reconnaissance pilot during World War II. In 1944, he took off on a reconnaissance mission from Corsica and never made it back, and there was never any evidence of what might have happened to him and his plane. Finally, in 1998, a French fisherman pulled up his net and found wrapped in it a silver bracelet engraved with Saint-Exupéry's name, and in 2004 a diver searched in the area and found the remains of his plane, which had apparently been shot down by a German fighter after all. Not exactly solved, as there's no 100% confirmation, but the whole "what's the main buyer of glitter" craze from a while back. Turns out it's highly likely, basically confirmed in my opinion, that it's boat paint. Just boat paint. To clarify, there's an article I read about a bunch of guys trying to get to the bottom of this by talking to people related to the industry. One person explained that when he worked at a boat paint company, forgot the exact wording, they went through around 10 30-gallon barrels a week. And that's just one company. He also explained that most other companies he knew basically brought from GlitterX too. That is both an ending I didn't expect and far more tame than I'd hoped, although I don't know what I was hoping for. Some sort of gigantic glitter-faceted underground civilization or a particular body paint kink that half of the world was keeping secret from the rest of us, maybe. Adventures with Purpose, a great YouTube channel where a group of divers find missing people underwater after years when the local authorities don't care anymore or just don't have the resources. There once was an urban legend or conspiracy theory about a video game called Polybius. The story goes as such. A mysterious arcade cabinet appeared in Portland, Oregon in 1981, with never-before-seen gameplay. It was captivating to the point of addicting, but that's not all. Many who played the game fell sick or went mad. Some versions of the myth detail that it caused hallucinations and nightmares or drove players to take their own lives. Every version of the urban legend mentioned mysterious men in black, who would check on the game every now and again, leading some to believe that this was some kind of government psyop to make people go insane. Several times over the years, it was proven to have not existed, usually by pointing to a lack of contemporary media coverage or an FOIA request that found no records of such a video game. But this left people unsatisfied. If it truly were a psyop, of course these channels would come up blank. It wasn't until a retro gaming YouTuber and journalist called Ahoy, who's a god-tier YouTuber by the way, made a video detailing his investigations. He not only proved it to be false, he found the exact person, place, time, and purpose for which the rumor was created. Honestly, it's one of my favorite watches on YouTube and possibly my favorite documentary ever made. This guy's investigation is captivating and goes into an insane amount of detail. The Windsor Hum. Residents of Windsor, Canada, have been saying they could hear a hum coming from across the river in Detroit for the better part of a few decades. Well, it turns out that when a steel producer turned their furnaces off recently, when they closed up shop, the hum stopped. People had no idea what the noise could be until the factory closed. Also, a little fun fact, Zug Island, where the factory was located, was mentioned in RoboCop and was also the destination of SS Edmund Fitzgerald before it sank. Devil's Kettle Falls. A stream separates into two sections. One continues normally, the other spirals deep into a hole. All sorts of things were thrown down into the hole in an effort to discover where the water went. Ping pong balls, various dyes. It was even rumored that someone stuck an old car down there. Eventually, someone came up with a clever idea. They measured the total water flow above and below the falls and discovered they were similar enough to deduce the two streams joined back up relatively quickly. Q Lazarus, who recorded the haunting Goodbye Horses that was later included in the soundtrack for Silence of the Lambs, was a mystery for many years. It turns out she recorded exactly 2 singles, retired from music, and is now a bus driver. Forrest Fenn's hidden treasure chest that he buried years ago and left clues to where to find its location. It was found within the last 2 years, I think. Its value has been estimated as high as $2 million, depending on the appraisal of the items. The case of Adrienne Shelley, screenwriter for Waitress. Husband came home to find her hanging in their shower. It was ruled that she had taken her own life. The husband insists she was happy and would never have done that, promoting another view of the crime scene, where they found a shoe print that matched a construction worker in the building. Sure enough, the construction worker went to rob her and he thought he killed her, so he staged a scene to make it look like she ended things herself. And then the hanging ended up being the actual thing that killed her. The Erebus and the Terror were found a few years ago. The 2 ships were part of an Arctic expedition and disappeared 150 years ago. They had a whole section of the Museum of History in Ottawa for it a few years ago, with some remnants of the ship. It was very interesting. One thing that struck me was for years, the local indigenous population talked about those crazy white guys trying and failing to sail through the Northwest Passage, and ended up resorting to cannibalism in an attempt to survive. Their stories were ignored for decades, but what do you know, the oral histories ended up being an important part of finding the wreckage, and they found cut marks and evidence of cannibalism on some of the bodies found on King William Island. In 1997, a really weird and loud noise was detected underwater, and everyone was all, "What the frick was that?" In 2012, it was determined it was an iceberg breaking and/or rubbing against the seabed. The sailing stones of Death Valley. Rocks would magically move up 1,500 feet in the desert. Turns out it gets cold and freezes the ground overnight, and the rocks would get pushed by the ice sheets that melted under the wind. I would probably have assumed it was just very bored and very dedicated pranksters working through the generations, and somehow this amazing scientific phenomenon is kind of disappointing. Benjamin Kyle, man found beaten behind a Burger King with severe amnesia. It was a fascinating mystery until it was solved, then it was kind of sad. He had made TV appearances, had a couple of AMAs on Reddit, but no one could identify him. When his identity was discovered, William Burgess Powell, there was still a gap of 20 years in his life from 1984 to 2004. There's no record he had done anything. He had distanced himself from his family and had no friends, which is why no one recognized or identified him from his TV appearances. When he was saying his name was Benjamin Kyle, it was actually Benjamin. He was actually pretty certain that his name was spelled with 2 A's. How he came to that conclusion when his name is nothing like that is still a bit of a mystery. 1947. A British South American Airways aircraft named Stardust disappeared. Its last message was simply, "Stendeck. Severe turbulence encountered, now descending." After an exhausting search, no trace of the aircraft was found. For years, conspiracy theories and talk of alien abduction by wackos circulated. Until 1998, when mountain climbers on a remote mountain found an engine, pieces of metal, and clothing at the bottom of a glacier on the side of Mount Tupungato. Turns out the aircraft got caught flying the wrong way in the jet stream while it was flying at night and used a system of timing when to start their descent. Being in the jet stream reduced their airspeed in relation to the Earth, and they smacked themselves into the side of a mountain, after which an avalanche covered the wreckage. The wreckage took decades to flow down the sides of the mountain with the glaciers. The glacier preserved the wreck so well that 50 years later, the recovery team found identifiable remains, personal items, and could read serial numbers on the engines. Amazingly, one of the landing gear tires was still inflated, and teams continued to visit the site periodically as more of the aircraft, cargo, and remains of passengers are still emerging from the ice. While it doesn't give us who the Zodiac Killer is, just recently his most famous 340 cipher was solved after 51 years. According to Oranshak and the team, the message reads, "I hope you're having lots of fun in trying to catch me. That wasn't me on the TV show, which brings up a point about me. I'm not afraid of the gas chamber because it will send me to paradise all the sooner, because I now have enough slaves to work for me where everyone else has nothing when they reach paradise. So they're afraid of death. I'm not afraid, because I know that my new life is life, will be an easy one in paradise, death." Dan Rather was attacked and beaten on a New York street by 2 men who kept demanding, "What's the frequency, Kenneth?" He was rescued by a doorman, and the 2 guys got away. For years, no one knew who they were. Then a man invaded NBC studios and killed a stagehand. When captured, he explained that the networks were beaming radio messages into his head. He wanted to know the frequency they were using so he could jam the signals. Dan Rather was shown a mugshot and positively identified his attacker. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. Another science mystery. Back in the 1800s, evolution theorists had predicted the age of the Earth to be several milliard years, since this would have been necessary for the current life forms to have evolved. But Kelvin, the #1 superstar of physics at the time, had used thermodynamics to calculate the age of the Earth based on the temperature of its insides, and he said it was quite a bit younger. This was a mystery for many years and was considered one of the major flaws of then-current evolution theory. It was not until the early 1900s they found the answer. Radioactivity. Decays of uranium and other radioactive elements are heating up the Earth, so the cooling takes longer than expected. The biologists were right all along, but when the scientists who made the discovery were about to present their findings, who's sitting at the back of the lecture room? It's Kelvin! Now an old man, he's still alive and has come to watch their presentation. They were terrified at the idea of having to stand in front of the Lord of Physics himself and basically explain why he was wrong, but to their great relief, he immediately fell asleep. I think about this when I myself fall asleep in physics class. It happens to the best of us. What Deinocheirus looked like. When I was a kid in the 80s, all that was known were the bones of the arms with enormous claws. Hence, its name, Terrible Hand. They were mostly shown grasping a small car because they were so freaking huge. The rest of the animal was a complete mystery. Was it like a giant Allosaurus? One that'd make the T-Rex look like a puppy in comparison? A few years later, it seemed more likely to be ostrich-like and omnivore. Either way, given how rare it is for fossils to form at all, I was convinced I'd die never knowing what this dinosaur actually looked like. Then, surprisingly, in 2014, they found more bones, and it was just the weirdest thing. This one is strange. A guy is out drinking with friends late at night and leaves. He starts wandering the streets, and a CCTV sees him enter a cul-de-sac. Then he's never seen again. Some think there's foul play, since an accidental death would at least result in a body. But then family and friends reveal that he had a very strange habit of falling asleep in garbage bins when he was drunk. A few hours after he entered the cul-de-sac, the garbage truck came and picked up the bins. Later, after looking at the logs, it turns out that one bin weighed several hundred pounds more than it should have. But that was only recognized after it was too late. Damn. So the guy probably suffocated on trash while drunk or got crushed. Britt here. I seem to remember the police realizing quite early that he was most likely in the dumpster. They searched the landfill for months and unfortunately were not able to recover his body. What a way to go. I mean, is that a Darwin Award? I think for that to qualify, you have to go apply an exotic but ill-advised method to solve a different problem. And what this guy did was just a strange drunken habit. Sad, although you have to wonder how often he was getting plastered for this to be a trademark thing that he did. Mark Felt was DT, the key source for the journalist that pursued the Watergate story. Met him once in the 80s. He was a connection through a business associate of my father's. When it came out that Mr. Felt was DT, my dad called me to remind me of the dinner that we'd had when I was a kid. I don't remember much other than the intimidating vibe. The type of guy who, even as an 8-year-old, I didn't need to be told to mind my manners around. I just did that because he was scary, and his wife wore a hat with a fake bird in it. So in the early 2000s, someone posted new wave music that had been initially recorded off a German radio station on cassette around 1985. It contained about a minute of a song that became known as Stay, the second time around, that no one seemed to be able to find any more information about. This became a pretty famous earworm internet mystery until 2013 when folks on Reddit discovered the actual song and artist. It turned out it was a song by the Swedish artist Johan Lindell titled Up on the Roof, that never became any kind of hit up until that time, and had never been re-released after the original analog release. El Dorado, or the Lost City of Gold, turned out to be a mistranslation. It was just the name of some guy that got mistranslated to the name of a city. Sounds like exactly what someone who's on the trail would say. The trail that we blaze! They heard stories of a Muisca ritual where their leader would be covered in gold dust and then jump into a lake to sacrifice the gold to the gods. The Spanish called him Golden Man, El Dorado. Eventually, they believed the name referred to a city, not a person. The murders of Jay Cook and Tanya von Keulenborg. A couple from Victoria, BC went on a short trip to Washington State in 1987 and were murdered. It remained unsolved until 2018 when a genetic match on the DNA found on Tanya was found. The story was of interest to me as I live in Victoria and remembered the story on the news when the murder happened when I was a young kid. Between 2010 and 2015, I actually worked with her younger brother. He grew up and became a lawyer. Very nice guy, and I was so happy for him when they announced it was solved. The Andreen McDonald case. She and her husband Andre, yes, Andreen and Andre, originally were from Jamaica. They moved up to my town in Texas where Andre was Air Force and Andreen was a bodybuilding business owner. Andre was pretty jealous that Andreen was more successful and was constantly begging and demanding that she make him co-owner of her company. She always said no. One day he'd had it and did away with her. The gym that she frequented every single morning got concerned when she stopped showing up. She was very close with the ladies she worked out with and even gave them a key to her house. She told them that if she ever went missing, that her husband probably did it, and they knew he had an attitude. So one day, while Andre was out, the ladies went to check on Andreen. Her car was there, her wallet was there, but she wasn't. They found blood and hair in her bathroom. That's when the cops were called. Cops showed up when Andre was home and asked about Andreen. He said she was in the hospital. They asked him, if she's in hospital, how come her wallet's here? He responded simply, talk to my lawyer. They got a warrant and were able to search the house further, saw more leftover evidence in the bathroom and evidence of clothes had been found burned in the fire pit in the backyard. But no body. So all they could do was charge him with a missing persons deal. Andre was super snarky about it too. How he'd be proven innocent, how the cops would never catch on. Little did he realize how loved Andreen was, and how much Texas ranchers hate corrupt and snarky murderers. Crowds gathered daily and were given permission to sweep over the rancher's land for any sign of Andrine's body. Just as the crowds started feeling defeated and Andre started to see hope of being released, a rancher was scoping his field. He had heard coyotes out and went to see what could have enticed them. Surely enough, he found human bones, later identified as Andrine. So yeah, proper charges were able to be filed. So some ask why she stayed or why he felt jealous that she was more successful. Remember, they're from Jamaica. The whole point of coming here was to better themselves and bring pride to their families. So she was doing great, but because she was doing so good, his family was kind of looking down on him because his wife was better and more successful than him. Then she stayed with him, mainly because she wanted to try and make sure their daughter's life could be as normal as possible. Sucks that it kind of backfired for her, but now she's being taken care of by her aunt and grandma, who both love and support her. What a grim story. Not that I ever intend to murder anyone, but doing it and then staying put and complacent in a community full of people who suspect you doesn't seem like the smartest move. In the 1970s, a number of Japanese citizens disappeared from coastal areas in Japan. After many years, it was found out that North Korea had abducted them. Most of the missing were in their 20s. The youngest, Megumu Yukata, was 13 when she disappeared in November 1977 from the Japanese west coast city of Niigata. In case anyone else is interested, also go look up the time that Kim Jong-il kidnapped a South Korean director and his actress wife, as well as the special effects team behind Godzilla in order to make his own monster movie, Pulgasari. Where is the Titanic? Most people don't realize that half of the people in the world grew up when the ship's location was still a complete mystery. Now, it's old news. Memories of Murder, a movie based on a true story about South Korea's first serial murderer. A confession was made in 2019 after more than 30 years. He was already in jail for doing the unspeakable act and killing his sister-in-law. Go check the movie, it's a masterpiece. What's the purpose of the appendix, really? Apparently we now know it keeps your good bacteria safe. Well, my appendix tried to kill me. 100 years ago, Viking bones from one of the most important grave finds in Denmark disappeared from the Museum of National History. They were found last week in a box, seemingly misplaced among elements from a different find. Gidus and the Land of Tar. A few years ago, 2017, comedian Nate Fernald posted a tweet of an enamel pin he had bought of a familiar-looking friendly monster with the word Gidus written underneath it. He was unable to find any information on what Gidus is, and the mystery took the internet by storm. The mystery kept growing as someone found a sticker of Gidus alongside other characters, all listed as the Land of Tar. The sticker sheet was from a company called Denison. There were no Google results at all for either Gidus or the Land of Tar. With multiple people researching, that was where the mystery was left off, and people kind of forgot about it. But a couple of years later, it was solved. A podcast was made where they investigated the mystery, got a hold of the former art director of Denison back in the 80s, who referred them to a few potential artists, and they found the daughter of one of the artists who had passed away, and in her father's stuff was the original pencil drawings of the creatures of the Land of Tar. It was never anything but those stickers. This internet mystery still appeared on lists for a while as unsolved. The only mystery left is who made the enamel pins, which is still a mystery but not as big as who is this character in this land that seems familiar but there's no record of. I have one that most people seem to not know about. Grand Duchess Anastasia was in fact killed with the rest of her family in 1918. She never escaped, and the several women throughout the 20th century claiming to be her lied. The site of the execution of the Tsar and his family was completely untouched until 1991. Excavation found only 9 of the 11 expected remains. It wasn't until 2007 that 2 further sets of remains were found a small distance away from the previous grave sites. DNA testing found that one of the sets of the remains belonged to Tsarevich Alexei, and the other to one of his sisters. With this find, it proved conclusively that the entire imperial family was in fact executed and buried in 1918. What's the last horrifying discovery you made while snooping around? Yesterday, my roommate ditched out of state right before rent is due, so naturally I'm curious how he left his room and whatnot. Got more than I bargained for, room is a disaster, beer bottles and food all over, but the thing that got me most was his adult toy for his butt and huge pile of used tissues. If I ever see him again, I might just go to prison for what I do. I was around 7 or 8, snooping in on my mum and dad's closet. I found a file with some papers, including my birth certificate. It had my sister's name as my mum, and for dad it said unknown. So that was my first indication I was being raised by my grandparents. Yeah, that was a crappy day. What did that do to your relationship with your sister mom? It really messed it up in my opinion. I was too young for this kind of revelation and didn't have the maturity or knowledge to properly process it. I was 8 years old and felt like everyone who mattered to me had lied to me. I felt like it was a mean joke that everyone was in on but me. As my brother, uncle, told me years later, I became a very angry child after that and acted out quite a lot. I'm still in contact with my bio mum, but we really don't have much of a relationship. But that's all good. My mum lost her phone, so while at their house, I fished out my dad's old iPhone 4 and charged it up so she could activate it and use it while waiting for her replacement. The phone was a few years old, so I decided to look through the pictures for fun and because I'm a freaking snoop. I stumbled upon a very undressed photo of my dad, a freaking mirror selfie, Jesus freaking Christ, Dad, and immediately threw the phone to my mum in disgust. My mum's face turned white and said, "This picture definitely wasn't for me." And that's how I accidentally exposed my dad's affair. I wasn't snooping, but I used my wife's laptop one day because my computer was dead. I found out she had a secret email account and was active on lesbian dating sites. I'm male, by the way. I'm a girl. My boyfriend at the time left his email open and I saw that he was responding to ads on Craigslist and Backpages.com to meet up with, I don't even know what the terminology is anymore, I guess trans women? I always felt like he flirted with the idea of being with a guy but was super outwardly homophobic. We broke up eventually, for kind of unrelated reasons, and I saw that he's been recently in vacation in Thailand. I know what he's up to. Rubbers in Dad's backpack. He only uses that backpack when he's on business trips. Oh dear. Well, you never know. Was your dad an army man? Would he have needed a way to store water if he lost his canteen? I'm clasping at straws here. I found a really detailed journal my mum kept while she was fighting cancer about 3 years after she died. She wrote in it describing how the cancer was getting worse and the treatments getting harder to cope with. It was pretty hard to read, but it made me kind of glad that her nightmare was over. Death doesn't always have to be as sad as people make it out to be. For a lot of people, it's a release. One day I came home from work early and my husband had gone out and left some very questionable torrents downloading, which led me down a rabbit hole of deceit and craziness that I never would have thought he was capable of. I found a friend's Reddit profile. I found out how lonely and depressed he feels all the time despite appearing to be one of the happiest and most outgoing people I know. I definitely make sure I include him in any plans we do if I can. I never told him that I found it. I met a woman, I'm a woman too by the way, and I knew she was on her second marriage. She never talked about her first husband, and I assumed she'd had a bad divorce and never brought it up. I eventually googled her name and found out her first husband died of cancer. We've been good friends for a year now, and we've still never discussed it. Was on a road trip with my parents. Looked over my mom's shoulder to see who she was texting. It was the guy she was cheating on my dad with. I confronted her a few days later. She denied it, of course. Then I read word for word what they were texting and she couldn't deny it anymore. She told me she'd tell him. That was a year and a half ago. She still hasn't. I don't really know what to do with what I know. I know I should tell my dad, but I really don't want to be the one to tell him. Next time I see my mom, I don't see her much anymore because of this, I think I need to threaten her and tell her that she needs to tell him or I will. It's a really crappy situation to be in. Similar story, my now ex-husband had been acting odd and on his phone a lot. If one of our kids were near him, he'd position the phone so they couldn't see. Even put a password on the phone. Before this, he'd always let the kids use his phone for games. My middle son, he was 10 at the time, 16 now, thought he'd be funny and guessed the password based on what he could glance at while walking by. He guessed the password and brings me the phone and is visibly upset. I look down at the phone and there's an email my husband has sent to another woman, telling her how he missed her and loved her, etc. I only read the first few lines before I confronted him. He just laughed. My son sat on the front porch that night with me. He wouldn't leave my side. He's still a sweetheart at 16 and very protective of his mum. When my father died, I was going through his computer looking for information regarding accounts, etc. I looked at his internet history to see what might have been important in his life leading up to his death. Apparently, he didn't know about incognito mode when surfing his adult content. About 11 or 12, staying at my uncle and aunt's. They went out for the day and I stayed back as I was feeling ill. Looked in their closet and found a suspicious video. Popped it in, lady in greenhouse spreading herself. Nice. I started cranking it. Realized it was my aunt. When I was snooping through my parents' closet in middle school while they were out, and I found a toolbox full of adult toys and penthouse forums. So, yeah. Found a bunch of letters written to and from my parents about my dad's infidelity. I think they wanted to really think about what's on the page. It's caused me significant emotional distress because I'm not supposed to know and I can't tell my sister or talk to them about it. People who are technically my equals at work get paid more than me, but yet they introduce me as, "Oh, this is John, he's our main guy. Ask for a raise, and if not, start looking around." I'm already doing both. A couple of years ago at my old job, the time came for our quarterly raises. Mine was pretty crappy, and I wasn't too happy about it. I went to grab the printout of my new pay rate and saw one of the new employees' printouts underneath it. His raise, while still minuscule, was almost twice as much as mine was, and his hourly rate was higher too. I was teed off. He'd only been there a couple of months, and he had less knowledge of the products we sold. We were salespeople at a major wireless carrier, and he was late and absent all the time. But since he had an outgoing personality and enjoyed bullcrapping with the customers, I guess he was more valuable to the company. I quit shortly after that. I was about 7 or 8 years old, snooping around my parents' room, and found an original copy of The Joys of Sex, an entire book of ugly, hairy people climbing on top of each other. The deed became a scary, nauseating thought after that experience. Oh god, I found that at our cabin when I was like 14. It was fascinating in a can't look away from a train wreck kind of way. I remember marveling that the drawings were so well informed and anatomically sound, but so lifeless. I know, right? Nobody looked overly pleased to be there, and they were drawings. How hard is it to draw a smile while being pierced from behind by a large hairy man? I imagine it would be hard to draw anything while being pierced from behind by a large hairy man, regardless of whether or not you were enjoying it. Well, thank you to everyone who contributed to that little exchange. I kind of have a morbid fascination with seeing whatever gruesome deeds are depicted in that book now, but I'd better not, for my sanity. Found out my ex was cheating on me. Ironically, I only snooped because I wanted to put my mind at ease. I know nothing is going on, but I can't shake this feeling of impending doom, so I'll just check and reassure myself. Haha, I was naive. Was reformatting a guy's laptop in the barracks back in my army days. The guy was really stupid. We were in IT training for one thing, and he should have been more than able to do it himself, but that's besides the point. So my buddy and I go to his room and mostly plan to reformat his laptop and screw with it. The whole turning the picture upside down, screen capping the desktop and rotating it, stuff like that. But just before we wiped the laptop, we found loads of illegal, disgusting material, like terabytes of it. When we called him over and asked him what the frick it was, he was proud of it. He said, "Nah dude, it's cool. Look, she loves it." It was at this point when I had to restrain my buddy from literally throwing this guy out the third-floor window, while 2 others helped this guy to the sergeant's desk. He had some difficulty with the stairs. The last I heard, he was dragged off for a court-martial, but I guarantee he's rotting in prison somewhere. This was just before I got out of the army, so my information is very limited. Still super effed up though, it was like he wanted us to see it. I found my great-grandfather's diabetic pee in a small glass vial. Didn't know what it was until I spilled it, then came the rancid smell and my mum telling me as it is. Next was a snake in an alcohol bottle filled to the brim. Seeing that when I was 8 years old was eerie, but ultimately didn't end there. Haha. When I was younger, my grandma got a kidney stone removed and asked the nurse to keep it in a bottle to give to my brother. That's when I realized I wasn't the favorite grandkid. My partner left her phone in my car and I got a feeling like I should check it. I'd had 100 opportunities to check her phone but never felt the urge. I always figured there was something about her behavior that triggered some kind of subconscious suspicion that caused me to check it. It's not like I went through all her text messages or anything either, just the last few texts and the most recently updated conversations. That's exactly what I did. It was a coworker of his and the way he talked about her made me uncomfortable. Also, whenever she hung out with us, she made no effort to interact with me at all, and I always kind of felt like a third wheel with my own boyfriend. If she was already there when I came over, she'd sort of fall silent, and they both looked slightly guilty. I asked him about it a couple of times, very calmly mind you, and he always got defensive and started moping because I didn't trust him. Turns out he was a pretty good liar, haha, but very dumb to leave me bored in a waiting room with nothing but his phone to entertain myself. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below. And if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I found out that my mum, who had forcefully taken me off my antidepressants and antipsychotics twice because medication isn't needed for those kinds of things, has been on antidepressants for about 14 years. Hypocrite. I found my sister's double-ended adult toy. I showed it to other kids whenever I could. Double-bladed, like Darth Maul. Reading my husband's, at the time we were roommates, Facebook messages when we were just roommates. Many of them were about the crazy girl he lived with and how much he hated her. Broke my heart, honestly, but it was my fault for looking. I was the crazy girl, medicated and happily married now. How did you stop being crazy? Did you hate him too? Through continued psychological care and medication, I liked him, and that was the major issue. After my mum died, my younger sister and I were going through drawers looking for her life insurance papers. We pulled out a paper in her nightstand and found the old envelope. Pulled it out, it had Polaroid undressed pictures of my mother from the time my dad was in Vietnam. My sister and I looked at each other, put them back in the envelope, and put them in my dad's nightstand. When he dies, we'll shred them. I checked my dad's computer history when I was in high school. Accidental snooping. I was trying to find a site I'd been on recently. Tons of gay adult material came up. Life has never been the same since that day. That was either a secret that your mother was already aware of, or a ticking time bomb whose explosion gains more potential energy every passing day. Was looking for my birth certificate in my mum's safe. I began snooping around the safe a little more, out of curiosity, when I found an envelope with my name written on it in my mum's handwriting. Even more curious, I opened the envelope and pulled out a piece of paper with more of her handwriting on it. It explained why she put me up for adoption. I was pretty shaken up by it. She nearly gave me up. Sad part? She's a crap human being, and I sometimes wish she had. Years ago, I was digging through my mum's sock drawer looking for a pair of low-cut socks to borrow, since mine were all dirty and I didn't have time to do laundry. I felt something rubbery and was confused until I saw what it was. I'd accidentally grabbed my mum's marital aid. When I discovered my maternal grandmother had 4 different kids with 4 different men before settling down with my grandfather. My grandfather took them all in and later had 4 kids of his own with my grandmother. He loved them all the same and died protecting them. Some guy wanted to kill my oldest uncles for supposedly stealing his canoe. My grandfather found out and met the guy halfway to the river, and he got shot trying to block his way. This happened in Mexico where the law was non-existent and the guy was never imprisoned. A few guys later, that guy died after killing a cop. The cop's family found him and got their revenge. My grandfather was a great and interesting man. He was a vegan, but at the same time he would hunt and fish so that his kids could have food on the table. He grew his own vegetables and washed his own socks. I wish I could have met him. I went to my parents' room to get something. On the way out, I stepped on a used rubber. I was barefoot. A book full of positions to do the deed in my dad's bedroom. It had a plastic cover, a thing my father did to all his favorite books when he was in uni. I'm not a particularly nosy person, so I haven't really found anything too terrible ever. But my mum is the worst about invasion of privacy. I came home from campus one day to find out that my old mattress had been replaced with a new mattress, signaling to me that my mother had been by my house while I was gone without telling me. Having swapped my old mattress out meant she had to have noticed the huge nylon straps that ran under the mattress to each corner for tying a person down. Also, the 60+ feet of rope that had been on my floor was not there anymore. I began looking around and found the straps and the rope, both in my bedside drawer where the cuffs for the straps were already stored. My mum knew it was bedside table rope. Oh, this is a good one. I had a witch I worked with who didn't like me, and I somehow found out my boss's password for his email. I was snooping because, hey, you asked, and I saw an email from her where they were talking about me, and she made a comment about me being on Reddit all the time. Oh man, I used to sit next to my boss and looked at his screen once, and the girl that didn't like me complained that I was always on Skype. Skype was literally a program we used for work. She complained to him over Skype. I literally quit that job and got a better one because I couldn't handle her middle school level bullying anymore. It worked out and I'm at the best job of my life. Looked up my ex-girlfriend's real name. She gave me a fake name for the whole of the relationship and I was so smitten to believe her friends vouching, and finding out that she's popular in her hometown in the news articles. Her father works for Lockheed Martin and that she was actually dating someone else the entire time I was dating her. That fake name crap worked, I guess. But God, it hurts to this day and that was over 3 years ago. I'd think I'd be getting better, right? Nah, fam, still heartbroken. I went snooping for Christmas presents as a kid and found a Jurassic Park T-Rex toy. Christmas morning came and the toy read, "From Santa." That's when I knew. I was fixing up my boyfriend's phone because he'd just returned the loaner and needed all of his stuff restored after a repair. I had a couple of drinks in me at the time, or I probably wouldn't have snooped, but he'd been acting pretty distant the last couple of months. So I checked out some text messages between him and his friend. Honestly, I was hoping to find something sweet or reassuring, but instead I found out he was trying to find a nice way to dump me without hurting my feelings. And rather than sit on that info, I confessed that I snooped and confronted him about it. That was a sad day. We still care about each other and will remain friends as we were before we started dating. But I really, really loved that man. I just loved him more than he loved me, I guess. My mum's marital aid. Hey, your mom needs loving too, man. When I'm not there, at least. Cue the gif of the kids jumping at that sick burn. But seriously, I'm guessing it's not a surprise to any of us that half of these seem to be children discovering their parents' involvement in the birds and the bees. I found my dad's extensive magazine collection. As a kid, I was amazed. I found the, I think, October 1996 Playboy in my dad's bedside dresser when I was 12, and that was a turning point in my life. I went back when no one was home and became a man. Once I'd seen every photo in that magazine, I snooped around a bit more and found like a dozen more Penthouse and Playboy magazines on the top shelf of his closet. Goldmine. I was 5 and at my friend's birthday party. All our parents were there. My friend told us, there were 6 kids altogether, that his parents had a secret and he wanted to show us something. So we all crowded into his parents' bedroom, locked the door, and he told us that if we searched the room for the key, which opens a black suitcase, we'd find the secret. So we turned that room inside out and finally found the key in an old shoe. He opened up a black suitcase and there were tons of tapes, magazines, and giant adult toys wrapped in plastic bags. We didn't know what they were, so we thought they were pool floaties. Thinking back, we were whacking each other with them and doing all kinds of regrettable things because we didn't know what they were. Anyway, my friend told us that the real secrets were the tapes, so we popped them on in his dad's TV, in the bedroom, and started watching them. That was the first time I ever saw a real male member in real life. Unfortunately, it was also attached to a clown with a painted face, and the clown was doing the deed with all the women in the room who also had their faces painted to look like clowns. It was super traumatizing. I never got over it. Where the frick were your parents when all this was going on? This sounds like a bad episode of the Rugrats. Oh man, I was at a friend's house and he left me for an hour or so to pick up some other friends from a train station about an hour away. I figured I'd be cool and surprise everyone with some green herb when they got in. I was rolling on his dad's PC desk when my roach kind of slips under the keyboard. So when I lift the keyboard, there's a bit of paper stuck to the bottom with the password written on it. He has a smoking hot mum, so I decided to snoop on them. Instantly regrettable. A search for pictures yielded about 100 pics of his dad in women's clothing, stashed in a hidden folder called Medical Records. I shut down the PC and never spoke about it to anyone. I've not seen my friend in a few years, but I hope for the sake of his family it's still all hidden. His dad is some big-time financial director for a well-known supermarket chain. I don't really know how it would affect his career if everything got out. Fixing my grandmother's laptop and I found what I thought would be the answer. Restarted the laptop, but I needed to find the page again, so without thinking, I opened the history. These days I'm pretty hard to shake, but nobody is ready to suddenly discover their grandma's taste in special adult interests. Actually never regretted any of my finds while snooping, and I have found some crap. However, the one that was the biggest shock was when I found out Grandma was a smoker. Grandpa is heavily against smoking, by the way. A human skull in my neighbor's woods. I was snooping through my partner's emails for updates on a sad family situation that he has trouble talking to me about sometimes, and an email came in from his bank alerting him to suspicious activity. I opened it and saw the suspicious charge was for $2,500 at a jewelry store. Yep, ruined the surprise of his proposal. He still doesn't know, 3 years on. What's a glitch in the matrix you've used to coast through life? I got moved to a team on the 2nd floor. My desk was on the 4th floor. I stopped coming to work. The 4th floor team thought I moved downstairs. The 2nd floor team thought I was still upstairs. I just worked from home instead, for over a year. A while ago, I read about a forgotten employee who coasted by on a job he didn't understand. It was supposedly a true story. The author explains how they'd worked in a company for years, and at some point they were moved to a new position, within the same company. When he moved to the new position, no one really told him what the position actually was, and what he was meant to be doing. After a week, and then a month, he still didn't know, and it was too late to ask. So he was just filling time by coming into work and messing around all day. It had a bit about him getting a call from another company employee in a different city with the same job title. The author tried to pretend he knew what his job was before realizing the other guy was doing the exact same thing as him, and only called to try and find out from the author what the job might be. Whether it was true or not, it was a funny read. The article was called Forgotten Employee. Here's the quote. "The next day, I showed up at work with a new purpose in life. What I'd come across was even better than having no job. I now have a job with no responsibilities." So, there's a local convenience store called Sheets. A new store opened and they gave out sheets of 5 free coffee coupons. After a while, they just had them sitting out in a pile for you to grab. I asked one day if I could grab 2, and she said, "You can take the whole stack for all I care, we have a ton of those." So I did. I procured myself 500 free coffees. Sheets also has a rewards program. Every 10 coffees you buy, you get a free one. Every time I use a coupon, it still adds a coffee to my 10 count. I currently have 30 free coffees on my card and still a small stack of free coupons. Sheets is the best. One day the whole world will know that name. Not if that's their business strategy. A certain popular pizza chain in the UK once royally effed up my order, and head office sent me a voucher for a free pizza. Any size. I've had it for nearly a year now, and the delivery guy has never asked for the voucher, so I've had a lot of free pizza. So you just kind of say, "I have a voucher for pizza" over the phone, and they trust you? Usually the guy on the phone doesn't have a clue. He puts me on hold and then the manager asks a few questions, and every time they explain that I need to give the voucher to the pizza delivery guy. I never give the voucher, I'm never asked for the voucher, I've never been contacted about the voucher. I've used it on 2 to 3 stores, but I space it out because I'm scared they'll remember me. This is the sweetest deal, but these people eventually get found out most of the time, as the person in the next story can attest. Until last year, I'd been using an unrestricted free Big Mac coupon that I found on the internet. Not sure if someone edited it to remove the date or if they merely left it as an oversight, but I'd get a Big Mac every week and claim that I'd won a book with 52 of them. Eventually, a manager called my bluff and sent the coupon to someone higher up. Came back next week and saw it framed with a caption, "Longest running scam." I turned around and walked out. Once, cardamom pods were for sale at a local grocery, but instead of being $14.95 per ounce, the computer messed it up and they were $1.49 an ounce. I bought a lot of cardamom, and I made a lot of sweet buns. Thug life. There was a snack machine next to a soda machine. When you bought a snack, the soda machine would spit out a Mountain Dew. Another job had a soda machine where if you hit the button repeatedly after putting in your money, you'd get multiple sodas. A certain grocery store chain will offer you twice your money back if they sell you expired goods. While shopping, I specifically look for expired items, buy them and then return them to the customer service for double my money. Sometimes they give me cash, other times they give me gift cards to the store. I'm fine with either. I bet the company wouldn't even mind if they found out you were doing it intentionally. They've essentially hired you to clean the store of expired goods, and probably, from their perspective, not paying you a ton of money to do it. Yeah, my employer HEB just ended their out-of-date guarantee in May. It was if you found an expired item, you'd get the same item for free. We had a lot of people that took advantage of it, but even so, my manager explained to me that if they're able to find that much expired product on our shelves, that means things aren't being rotated correctly, and therefore someone we pay isn't doing their job correctly. So why not give the customer some sort of compensation for doing a job we should be doing, keeping expired product off the shelves? I downloaded LimeWire Pro off LimeWire. Holy crap, people still use LimeWire? I was using that back in the 5th grade, early 2000s, I think. A global hotel chain ran a promotion a few years ago where they sent a link to book a night's free stay. There was nothing to stop you from using the link repeatedly. I was stuck at Union Station in DC during Hurricane Sandy, and I used that glitch to house a lot of fellow stranded travelers. They either figured it out or the promo ended, but it went on for 9 months. Years ago, I was a cashier at a grocery store, and there was a glitch where the really expensive fancy ice cream that cost about $8 scanned as $2. All the cashiers knew about it, and we'd regularly buy a ton of the stuff. Very few customers bought that kind of ice cream, and if they noticed it scanning cheaper, we'd just wink at them. It went on for months until anyone noticed. I found out that the Target near me was only charging $8 for silverware that I think was supposed to be $28. I bought 2 sets of them, then went to another Target for a third, but that one charged me full price. I returned to the first Target, then went back the next day and got it for $8. Now I have so much silverware I can't even fit it all in the dishwasher. If you push the Diet Orange Fanta button on the drink machine on the second floor of my dorm building, it instead gives you 2 bottles of water and sometimes lemonade. I decided to buy a chocolate orange at a local supermarket, took it to the self-checkout and it scanned with the value of 1 pence. So I got my friends to run back and clear the shelves of chocolate oranges and bring them back to the till. Got 30 chocolate oranges for 30 pence. I used to work for a web host. We had a referral program that tracked your customers by cookie. I had set up a referral site for myself and showed a coworker without thinking about it. From then on, whenever a customer would sign up over the phone with him, it earned me about $50. There was a gumball machine at the grocery store that would spit out 4+ pieces of candy if you turned the crank really slowly. Yeah, some old ones had a very simple scoop and dump mechanism, and they just locked after a revolution, so if you held it just right, there would be a hole there and you could shake a ton of candy out. Public transit in my area sells day passes for $9. I've used the same day pass for 2 years. When I was basically homeless back in high school, I'd get day passes from a shelter to go to school. I was often able to use the same one without getting the months or days punched out for multiple days, depending on how much of a crap a given bus driver gave. Not too long after I figured that out, I could punch the holes in the date areas halfway and fold the paper back just a little so it looked properly punched and therefore valid. Every day I would fold the used day back and tape the backside. Thus I could use a ticket for a whole week or 2. I'd use the extras I got to give to trolley cops who would scrutinize tickets and passes and otherwise reuse the same ticket over and over. I've been gaming the free stuff for your birthday racket for several years. Most of the restaurants and businesses don't check for your actual birth date, so I use different months with different businesses so the discounts and meals are spread through the year. To be fair, as long as he's only claiming a single birthday with each business, it doesn't matter that he's giving different businesses different dates. No one's ever called me out on it, but as long as I'm not trying to get more than 1 birthday deal a year, why would they care? I rarely celebrate my birthday on the actual day anyway. It's December 27th, and if it's a weekday, I have work. This is a man who has decided that if Christmas is going to steal the thunder of his birthday, he's going to steal more birthday thunder from all his local restaurants and businesses. I don't approve, but it has a fun, petty supervillain quality to it. You know how I keep exploiting my glitches in the Matrix? I never tell anyone what I'm doing. Worked at a popular pizza chain some years ago. Automated phone system had a glitch that told customers we were closed an hour before we actually did close. Never corrected it because I can do tasks to close the store on time. One vending machine at my school would give you $4.50 in change when purchasing a $2.50 bottle of pop with a $5 note. A $10 or $20 note would give correct change. 50 cents for a bottle of pop. Yes, please. I once bought a $1.50 bag of chips from a vending machine. I paid with a toonie, which is a Canadian $2 coin. It gave me back 10 quarters, $2.50 in change. So I made $1 off a bag of chips. Even the vending machines are nice in Canada. I have a lot of traffic lights on the first mile or 2 of my drive to work, so I leave at 6:55 and I get to work 15 minutes early because I catch blinking yellows. I used to leave at 7 and get there just on time, and any extra traffic made me late. When I was 13 or 14, I had a sweet tooth and no money for sating it. Luckily, all the kids at the private school I went to did have money, so my best friend and I devised a plan to separate them from that money. Every morning before school, we'd go into the local co-op, buy various snacks, chocolate bars, flapjacks, crisps, etc., and take them to school in our bags. Then we'd run a small black market out of our lockers during breaks. There were no vending machines in the school and very few snacks available from the refectory, so we were completely in control of the market and made a lot of money. One year, this went into overdrive for Easter, making us over 400% our usual profit due to a pricing error at the coop. 6 Cadbury cream eggs were being sold for £3.99, giving us a $2 profit when we sold them for £1 each to our eager peers. But 12 cream eggs were only £3.69, giving us over £8 profit per pack. With cream eggs being a seasonal item, they were immensely popular at school. After a month or so, regrettably, someone picked up on the error and corrected it in their system. When we walked up to the till with 4 12-packs each, we discovered they were now priced at £6.99. So I assume they should have been all along. Luckily, when our faces fell and we explained they were only £3.69 on the shelves, the cashier rang them up at their shelf price. The next day, they were back to their usual price, though, on the shelves and system, so we went back to our old ways of scamming slightly less money out of our peers. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. When I was a kid, the soda machine at the pool didn't recognize when you'd hit the coin return. You could just cycle the same dime through the machine enough times and then make your selection. You'd even get your dime back at the end. When I was 7 on Halloween, I dressed up as Batman, then hit all the houses in my neighborhood. It was only 8, so then I dressed up as Spider-Man and got all of the houses again. Double the candy, mother effers. I miss all the candy, so I'm thinking of trick-or-treating this year as an adult. Not really a glitch, but I found out I could fit my arm into the vending machine at college and pretty much cleared out the bottom shelf. Fish and chips shop near my house. Gumball machine inside. Put money in and turn for 9 clicks. Hold dial in position. Flick a few times just underneath the dial. Turn for 1 more click and hold in position. Gumballs will continue to be released for as long as you hold it there. $1, unlimited gumballs. How could you possibly learn that? He started with 1 click. I had a Pepsi machine at college that ate people's change returns. I figured out how to get it unstuck and usually ended up with a soda and $4 every time I went to it. My Sprint phone gave me a Wi-Fi hotspot without me paying for it for about a year. I updated the firmware and lost the functionality, so I called Sprint to ask what was wrong. I was supposed to be paying for the Wi-Fi ability, $30 a month, and the lady asked if I'd been using it for the past year. I hung up, saved myself $360 without even knowing. My old job had a pretty high turnover in terms of managers, so none of them really had time to learn the intricacies of our building, nor the abundance of legacy and experimental job titles that people had been assigned. As the lone stockroom attendant, I used my knowledge of the basements and the fact that no one, including me, knew what the heck I was supposed to be doing, to go and have naps or generally hide and do nothing for most of the day. Purchased a 3-day trial for a website, cancelled it on the 3rd day. Access to the site remained active for the next 7 years. All I get from my internet provider is internet, but they do provide cable TV. So I thought, what would happen if I plugged my internet cable into my TV? Well, now I get basic cable for free, like 50 to 70 channels. I never use it though. Children think Netflix is the way TV is supposed to be. F all of those commercials and not picking exactly what you want on TV. They just didn't put a filter on your line. The cable guy messed up either when disconnecting previous service or setting your new service up. Your internet traffic operates on a different frequency than the video traffic. The filter gets rid of the cable TV transmission, so it's easy to remove them too if you know what you're doing. All you need is a way to get into the box, the keys are available on eBay, and a coaxial barrel connector to replace the filter. You might want to take a wrench too because the connections can be hard to break if it's been on for a while. My college gave out 10 free rubbers if you show school ID, but they don't scan it or anything, so I sometimes on the weekends would come in every 20 minutes, getting more and more protection until I had a stockpile. Then at night I would go around to parties selling them for $1 each. I feel like every university I've been to provides hundreds of free contraceptives if you know where to go. Then again, it's also a very typical move to go to a party without one of the hundreds that you have stashed away in your room, so fair play. WinRAR. Or is it supposed to be free? Wait, there's a paid version? Sam's Club once gave out a coupon that gave $5 off any cheese. All of their cheese at that point came in sub-$5 increments, and they didn't take the coupon at the end, they only scanned it. That weekend was the first wine and cheese party I'd ever hosted. In high school, I would go to the attendance office and say I needed to go home. The attendance lady would give me the phone to call my dad so she could talk to him to verify. I would instead call my deep-voiced friend and he would excuse me. Then he would go in about 30 minutes later and call me. Worked over 20 times and we were never caught. Best part, it didn't count as a missed class because it was excused. Nice job. You got out of a free education. Back in the day, there was an awesome MUDD called Dragon's Gate on AOL that was something like $2 an hour to play. It had a great community and it was a ton of fun. This was in dial-up days, so if you purposefully slowed your connection down by downloading something and logging into the game, You could hit spacebar on a sign-in screen a crapload of times and it would open up 2 screens. Just close the first one and it signs you out while still being connected, and you can play through the second screen for free. The best part was all the hate from other people on the forums when the glitch finally got outed. My first job in high school. I'm a habitually early person, so I found out that the time clock system would let me clock in 5 minutes early. I later found out that I could then clock out 10 minutes early and I'd be paid for all 5 hours. Another guy, an older man, worked 8-hour shifts and would save his 2 15-minute breaks, union job, and half-hour lunch and do his shopping for the week in his last hour. Now, I'm a truck driver. I'm home every day, so I don't really need the half-hour break we have to take, so I take one that logs in my book as a half-hour. I think this is a glitch that the company might know about, as so many local people talk about it. Okay, the shop is Waitrose in the UK. Big chain supermarket. They do various deals where a product is £5, but if you buy 3, then you get all of them for £10. Now, the glitch works when they reduce the product as its expiry date is near. So, now the product is down to £1, regularly less. The thing is, if you still buy 3 at the reduced price, the offer still kicks in and it takes £5 off your bill. The last time I did this, I noticed that a bag of potatoes was reduced to 30 pence, but it was buy 3 for £5. I ended up buying £9 of potatoes and got the rest of my shopping for free. Wine, beer, pizza, all free. You just have to make sure your bill does have a positive balance in the end, even if it's only pennies. I go down near closing time 3/4 of the nights a week and get this deal. It doesn't always get you the extra free stuff, but you usually get the 3 products for free. The products can be fresh meats, vegetables, fruit, and the pre-made meals like spag bol and pizza. In Counter-Strike Source, you can get outside the map in DE Piranesi and Counter-Strike Spawn. I sometimes just glitch outside of it and kill people from spawn. It freaks a lot of people out. You monster. I'd paid for a relatively slow internet connection, but I used it to get about 10 times faster internet with unlimited data. It was fun for a while. I wrote a program in Python that pretty much does my job for me the first day I went there. I do nothing at work all day besides Reddit and fun side projects with code. I got a TI-85 calculator from a thrift store for $1. I'd do the same thing with math work at school. If I know the material well enough to write a program to do it on my calculator, I figured it was good enough. I did this in DOS batch many years ago. I had one physical task which took about 3 minutes a day and everything else could be largely automated. Free glasses from Coastal.com. They have a free first pair deal, so you just keep making new Gmail addresses and use the coupon code. They don't check the shipping address, plus you can claim it's for family members or roommates. All you have to pay for is shipping. I have like 5 pairs. I have a 25% off code that I use for travel I book online fairly often. It was supposed to only be valid for a specific time period. That time period went over a year ago, and the code still works fine on the website. I get 25% off my travel every time. I think my free 6-month trial of Amazon Prime for students was supposed to end 5 years ago. I'm still a student, so I don't feel too bad about it. In early college, some friends and I were in the student union food court getting some frozen treats from a vending machine. We noticed the digital screen that usually says, insert bills face up or whatever said, test vend. Basically, you'd push a button and it'd just give you that selection without putting in any money. We got so many ice cream bars that we were giving them away to random students as we passed by. When I was in college, the sign-up system for classes was paper-based. You could get into any closed section by having your buddy drop that section, even if he wasn't taking it. Also, there was a men's room at the head of the line. Sometimes, right before the doors opened for registration, there would be about 50 people in that men's room. The train to my work and back costs £3.40 a day, and the machines have had trouble taking change in the past, so for about 5 months I've decided to not pay for a ticket. The fine for not having a ticket is £20. As long as I don't get caught for a weekend a day, I'm golden. That was until they decided to put more inspectors on the trains. Getting guac at Chipotle. My local team never passes it down the line, so I never get charged for it. Man, my local Chipotle practically assigns an armed guard to my burrito when I ask for guac. Then I visit my sister in San Diego and a restaurant serves what would have been $45 worth of guac at Chipotle prices. What's your profession's most interesting fact or secret? As a structural engineer, an engineer designs buildings and structures with precise calculations and computer simulations of behavior during various combinations of wind, seismic, flood, temperature events, and vibration loads using mathematical equations and empirical relationships. The engineer uses the sum of structural engineering knowledge from the past millennium, at least 9 years of study and rigorous examinations to predict the worst outcomes and deduce the best design. We use multiple layers of fail-safes in our calculations, from approximations by hand calculations to refinement with finite element analysis, from elastic theory to plastic theory, with safety factors and multiple redundancies to prevent progressive collapse. We accurately model an entire city at reduced scale for wind tunnel testing and use ultrasonic testing for welds at connections. But the construction worker straight out of high school puts it all together as cheaply and quickly as humanly possible, often disregarding signed and sealed design drawings for their own improvised field fixes. Research is never as cool as you think it is, even when there's fire and lasers involved. Most of the equipment I use is more than 20 years old and often duct-taped together. You're in research and you still have equipment? I just write frickin' grants all day. Amen to this. Plus, it's often shoved in the basement or some windowless, dusty room with moldy pipes. And there's an incessant hum from the machinery that kind of makes you go Edgar Allan Poe story insane. Real estate. Everything is negotiable, especially the fee. Serial renter here, I've never paid the asking price. Actually, that's not quite true. One time they wouldn't budge on that but installed a brand new kitchen instead. In the army, you'll do a hell of a lot of landscaping. Oh man, when the new CG came to Fort Carson, he put out a memo that soldiers are not to be pulling weeds or edging. We can mow lawns, but no weeds. It's asinine to create busy work for soldiers who are essentially just between deployments. Either train, do associated work, send them to college, or give them time off, was the new guy's policy. Casino security. If you're ever in a casino and you see a chair tipped over against a wall or covered in a garbage bag, don't sit in it. The odds are that someone has either crapped, peed, or thrown up on themselves on it. Why didn't they get up? Because the next slot was going to be a winner. That is simultaneously sickening and not at all surprising. Stay classy, casino goers. Also of note is that it's apparently so common that it's an acknowledged thing across multiple venues. Mortician here. The butt cavity of corpses has to be sewn shut, or the corpse could toot during the funeral. Visual effect artist. Actors are modified in movies as they are in magazines. Skin correction, awkward smile correction, one eye is closed more than the other in a frame. We correct that. Smaller waist, longer legs, bigger arms, six-pack, there's a lot of fake involved. Meat processor. Many of the people who work in the industry are convicted felons who don't give a crap about food safety processes. One USDA agent cannot monitor the actions of 250 people. We deal with listeria on a daily basis, and sometimes it gets so out of hand that we have to shut down lines. The meat done that day still gets sent out, though. The most terrifying story in this group goes to you, my friend. I used to work in a meat department in a grocery store. My supervisor had a skid of 100 vacuum-sealed packs of pea-meal bacon. She'd over-ordered. There was a milky white liquid in the packages because the bacon expired 2 weeks ago. She asked me to take the bacon out of the vacuum seal, cut them, put them on trays, wrap them, price them, and put the expiry date for 5 days away. I quit my job, reported to the head office, and left. This same manager also asked me to take expired chicken wings, put them in a sink with diluted bleach in it, let them soak, rinse them, and retray them with a new expiration date. Oh, and if your frozen meat looks freezer burnt, it's because A. Some idiot kid left the skid out on the floor all night and put it in the freezers the next day. B. It's old. Or C. The bunker or freezer stopped working but was up and running again the next day. I'm now a vegan after working there. In conclusion, meat manager wanted me to sell bacon that expired 2 weeks before and sell expired chicken wings that were left in a tub of diluted bleach. Nom nom. All help desks are really just masters of Google. I worked at a children's hospital. When a young person dies, the bodies are transported to the morgue in stretchers disguised as what appears to be tall, covered mobile linen racks. This is done in order to not distress parents of other patients. If the person moving the rack's hands are uncovered, it's actually bed linens. However, if they're wearing latex gloves, well, you know. I worked at an amusement park. The ride operators that you trust so dearly with your lives and checking your restraints are mostly kids who do nothing, and their main job is to count how many people are on the ride. I had a chest restraint actually come unlocked when I checked it once, and my coworker tried to convince me to run the ride anyway. I'm a professor at a large university. Most days, I don't feel like an expert at all. Welcome to academia, world-class specialists with inflated senses of inferiority. Disability insurance. We hire private investigators to videotape people and hunt around for them online all the gosh darn time if they're suspected of fraud. I can't count the number of videos I've seen of people dancing at nightclubs and posting on Meetup begging for a cross-country ski partner while they're claiming they're in too much pain to do their desk jobs and collecting huge disability checks. I have no pity either. People like that make it much harder for people with actual problems to get the benefits they require to get better, which is heartbreaking. I'm a debt collector. We can settle for pretty much anything. What's the best way to get the lowest possible settlement? I don't know anything about first-party collections, so this advice is only for charged-off debt that has either been A. Sold out to a debt buyer who divvies it out among their law offices or collection offices, or B. Sent to a collection agency as a portfolio. Find out the age of your debt. If it's brand new, same month, they'll take anything to liquidate for that month. Aim for 50%. I've been given 42% as my lowest possible percentage. The older it gets, the lower you should aim. If this debt has been passed through about 3 agencies, start super low. I'm talking 10 cents on the dollar, especially if your debt is 5 digits. If you've been sued, then it gets trickier. Find out the status of your debt. Small claims or county civil, arbitration, just sued, judgment recently awarded, judgment awarded 5 years ago. Are they executing yet? Garnishment, bank levy, writs of execution. Go from there. Find out if you're exempt from any execution of payment. If you are, start crazy low because they can't do crap to you. If you aren't, be nice and work something out as soon as possible. Start at 50%. If it's an arbitration, offer 10 cents on the dollar, and if they don't meet you somewhere reasonable, get an attorney because you can fight this. Never be afraid to walk away, but always do it as nicely as possible. If you run into a butthole who claims he or she is the only person you can speak to, he or she is lying. Ask for a supervisor. Be nice. Don't let him or her provoke you. Call at the end of the month. If you can pay that day, call on the last business day of the month, and you'll get a great deal. Start super low, way lower than you actually have. I think that's basic negotiation. Once you've come to an agreement, get it in writing before paying, and pay by verified funds if possible. Credit card, cashier's check, money order, Western Union. Make sure you have easy access to a fax machine and email, and for God's sake, get a letter with all the account numbers. Original creditor account number as well as the in-house account number for the collection agency or law firm, with a signature stating that your account is closed. Keep that crap forever and ever. By the way, if you save $600 or more in principal or charge-off amount, then you'll be sent a 1099 at the end of the year. I've had people settle debts that are like $10K, and $6K of that is the charge-off amount. They settle for $3K and get a $3K 1099 that they have to pay taxes on as income. Take this with a grain of salt and confer with your tax preparer or whatever before accepting it as fact. I'm a lifeguard. I've seen a lot of kids get certified that would probably fall apart if a real emergency occurred while they were on duty.
I'm also a lifeguard and also definitely one of these kids. Luckily, I don't think anyone has gone in the pool I watch for 3 years.
I'd never thought about this, but it makes complete sense. This is a job that might often have teens or other people between jobs applying. Also, it's made me realize that a lot of American TV shows featuring teens normally has at least one who works a summer job as a lifeguard. Doctor here. We don't always have a way of figuring out what's wrong with you. There's no magic tests that will prove beyond any doubt exactly what you have. Furthermore, diagnosis of disease is not reached by following an algorithm. This isn't math. Your body didn't read my textbook, and way more often than not, there's not something I'm missing. In fact, every doctor I know orders way too darn many tests just to be sure they don't miss anything. Dumb doctors are few and far between. Jerks are not, but don't confuse the two. It took over 100 years of medical science to establish certain diseases as distinct entities, and many are rare or have convoluted criteria that only a few patients actually fill. So be patient and realize that I'm human and can't retain the entirety of my medical knowledge within my brain, and know that I'm working hard to help you get better. And you will be the last thing I think about before I go to sleep. The frozen yogurt where I work at is not fat-free or organic as we're made to say. The yogurt culture, a small cup of actual yogurt used to make the 4 gallons of the mixture, is organic. However, the milk, yogurt base, and flavoring used to make what's essentially 95% of the served product is not. In a way, the yogurt is organic and fat-free. What you're eating is far from that. Sales. The more expensive something is, the less logic people use to decide if they're going to buy it. People will buy a $50,000 car because it's red and scrutinize the calories in a $1.50 snack. Oh, and for all you tech guys, this is especially true when your boss is deciding what equipment or network options you're going to have. Chances are he bought what he did because someone gave him tickets to a sporting event, not because it's what you actually needed or requested. I work at a college dining hall. The 4-cheese calzones really contain only 3 kinds of cheeses. A pinch of mozzarella gets sprinkled on the top, and that counts as the 4th cheese. You son of a witch! Service clerk. If something isn't on the shelf, then we most likely don't have it, and asking me to check the back for it really just gives me a chance to look at my phone for text messages. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. I work at a fireworks store. I answer your questions by reading the package and guessing what it does. Dry cleaning involves liquid. Nuclear non-proliferation analyst. Radiation monitors at ports of entry are better at detecting kitty litter and toilet seats than weaponized uranium. No worries, the contractor who sold the equipment made serious money on sales of those machines, and that's all that matters. I'm a roofer. We can't always get off the roof to pee. Where does it go? Firefighter. People actually die so quick from one breath of superheated air that they can remain standing up. Casino security here. Money talks. You play $20 a hand, maybe $1,000 between gambling and food and everything, and get in a fight in the hotel, and you're probably going to jail. At the very least, you're being removed from the hotel. On the other hand, if you spend hours at our high-stakes table, all other circumstances being equal, we'll come to the room, tell you you're disturbing your neighbors, and please don't do that again. Same with basically anything that happens in a casino. We hate the people with money because they can get away with being the biggest jerks on the planet. But since their one weekend keeps the lights on in our casino for 6 months, we have to let them do as they wish, basically. Orchestral musician. We fake a lot of that crap up there on stage. If you tilt your violin, you can go into overdrive to recover after missing too many notes. Meteorologist in school. The 5-day or 7-day or longer forecasts are completely useless and only made because people would get upset if we didn't have them. You could probably do just about as good yourself on anything more than 48 hours away, just by reasonably guessing based on the time of year. I wonder how many people actually remember what the 7-day forecast said 7 days ago about today. I'm gonna steal your suggestion and make a website or a widget or something. Would be pretty easy to post what the weather said it was going to be today a week ago, and then post actually what it is. How about stats that say the percentage of humidity they were close to or way off? Oh, who am I kidding? It'll never be made by me. Sushi chef. Ahi tuna is actually just yellowfin tuna. It's the lowest quality sushi-grade tuna you can get. People come in all the time and ask if we have ahi, then scoff when we say that we carry big eye and bluefin, which is the highest grade you can get. And if I tell them that, they think I'm trying to pull one over on them. Other insights? Ask the chef when they get their fish delivered. Try to come in on the days close to that. If it's nearing the end of the week, you're getting the older fish. Not really any dirty secrets, at least in my restaurant we're reasonably clean. Spicy tuna is usually made from older tuna that's still okay to eat raw but maybe changing color or developing an off taste. I thought it was common practice for sushi joints to get their fish delivered fresh every day. At least that's how it is at the places I frequent in California. Unless they're right on the coast, they're full of crap. Most places get it twice a week. And here was the narrator hoping to learn the secrets of whatever the chefs are shouting at us whenever we walk in the door. Yes, I know I could just Google it. Yes, I know it's probably not as exciting as I think. Let me live in childish wonder, people. Cupcake bakery. Contrary to popular belief, freezing cupcakes actually makes the cake more moist than the freshly baked cupcakes. In fact, we don't sell any cupcakes that were baked that day because they just aren't as moist as the ones that have been in our walk-in overnight. Comedy writer. It takes a team of people to make your favorite people look brilliant. I recently learned that comedy writers compose anecdotes for guests on late-night talk shows like Letterman and Fallon. It's obvious once you know this, but I'm embarrassed to say that I had no idea this occurred. Federal economist. If you call any of my agency's data helplines, you'll be connected with an actual economist to answer your questions. I've found that most statistical agencies are the same way. My company has a piece of software, hosted by us, in which the usernames and passwords are meaningless. It uses a long unencrypted number. When the customers call and ask us to change their username or password, we tell them to hold on, clack the keyboard a bit, and then tell them they're all set. High school English teacher. I wish we could skip through a lot of the required texts too, but I hope my annoying enthusiasm will get us all through alive. I also answer more questions about grammar from other English teachers than from my students. I think the only reason they ask me is because they know I'm a freelancer on the side, so write more often than they do. Vet tech. If it seems like your pet has spent an unusually long amount of time in the back, it might be because we think it's extra cute and are petting it and playing with it or taking it around for all the employees to fawn over. For any skeptics, obviously there are many reasons why we've had your pet a little longer than usual, but this is definitely one of them, and it's my favorite. Nurse here. In nursing homes, we do every disgusting thing. Creams for your downstairs area? Yep. Suppositories? Yep. Putting your eggplant in a urinal and then holding it there so you can pee? Of course. We do all these things for the human body on a regular basis and we rarely get thanked for it, so please be nice. Also, a little added extra from my years as a hotel front desk agent, we can see the titles of all the adult flicks you watch and how long you did that for. So if you come down to the front desk and play it like it was a mistake, I'll know you watched F My Randy Wife for 47 minutes, and it will be very awkward. Catalyst synthesis chemist. The stuff I produce can make 20 tons of polypropylene from 1 gram of my material. Always blows my mind. Industrial engineer. Your company's processes are always going to have room for improvement because we need the work. Environmental scientist. Water from a municipal water source is just as or more sanitary than bottled water. Marketing and PR. Most of the magazine articles you read are influenced by the advertising dollars spent or the schmoozing by the PR pros. A human body cannot be completely consumed in a fire. I'm referring to most fires. Thermite reactions and lava pits might do the trick. I'm writing this down for future use. Don't dispose of bodies in fire. Got it. Adult store employee. Is that really a profession? Not really, no. But many of our toys are pretty much the same item in different packaging. A company will have different lines of toys that are really the same darn toys in different boxes. I'm a male massage therapist. If you get a stiff rod on my table and ask me to fix it, I'll deliver a quick chop or 3 to your upper inner thigh. It will reflexively disappear, and your berries will try to hide inside your pelvis. Fixed. It helps set the tone if some gross old man decides to press his chances. Hasn't happened in years, though. Athletes are refreshingly different from the general population. NASA intern. Most of the corrections to rocket blueprints are done in MS Paint. Chef. If you liked my first course, you'll usually get a larger dessert portion. Therapist. Most people get into the field as a result of their own personal struggles or messed up families. As a field, we're probably the most effed up. It's true, therapists aren't actually the perfect, stable people that a lot of us picture them to be. Most of them are just as messed up as the rest of us and have the training and emotional distance from their clients to be objective and help find and solve the problem. Advertising copywriter. There's very little manipulation or psychology involved. 99% of the time, it's just guys in a room talking about funny crap and then writing it down. Then, the account people retroactively justify to the client why it makes sense with a bunch of fancy science. But believe me, there's very little "this will trick them" going on in the writing room. Recruitment. Racism and ageism is a hell of a lot more prevalent than you'd believe. Your credit score affects insurance premiums. You know those fancy defense lawyers or public defenders you hire? Yeah, the DA knows them better than you do. When you aren't in the room, they'll tell jokes, and those jokes are about you. As a defense lawyer, I can say that this is somewhat true, but that doesn't mean that we're not doing the best we can for you. Sometimes that camaraderie can help you get a better deal. Lawyers, in my experience, are like athletes. Off the court, we may be friends, but when we get down to business, it's a nothing personal, no holds barred, free-for-all. Aerospace engineer. Every aircraft you've ever flown in has hundreds of cracks, dents, and just plain broken parts, even if it's brand new. On the plus side, we do design for that. A crack can grow to 3 feet on a 737 between inspections before it becomes a serious problem. For a good example of aerospace fail-safe design, see the recent Southwest 737 incident. It's a perfect example of how we design crack propagation to stop before it endangers the aircraft. Computer programmer. We were never actually trained on how to make your printer work. IT technician. There's a 75% chance I used Google to solve your problems. If only you knew how to do it yourself, you could have saved yourself $100. Alright, I'm a little late to this party, but I'm a radio DJ and I just want to shout this so everyone knows. People actually freaking love Nickelback. We get maybe 2 to 3 calls a day asking for some obscure cover some indie band did, and the rest are just all requests for that crap you complain about hearing too often. Listeners absolutely cannot get enough Nickelback, Linkin Park, Green Day, and others. It's mind-boggling. The reason Photograph is on the radio so gosh darn much is because people keep requesting it. It's not my fault. What surprised you about your richer or poorer spouse's way of life? Making financial decisions based around the 3-paycheck month. If you're paid every 2 weeks, most months you get 2 paychecks. All of your monthly bills and budgeting is based on those 2 paychecks. But twice a year, there are 3 paydays a month, and that's when you can actually solve problems. That's when you can get the car registered or fix the dryer or get the cat spayed. The other 10 months, you're doing maintenance and trying to scrape by. 3 paycheck months, you can actually try to fix problems. I was the poor one. My husband, at the time still boyfriend, took me out to a very nice restaurant. The waiter asked if I wanted pepper on my Caesar salad that was just made tableside. I said sure, and he goes about it. The thing is, I didn't know you had to say stop. My husband slowly realizes this, but decides to see it play out. He did eventually say that I needed to say stop. I just thought a Caesar was had this way, as it was the first time of mine even eating a salad that wasn't just iceberg and ranch dressing. It still tasted fine, just a little bit too much pepper. I was adopted at age 7. I lived in extreme poverty, and then all of a sudden I lived with a doctor who bought gifts for birthdays and Christmas. I didn't even know that was a thing. I didn't know you could go to the store to get food. I just thought you went to the church and had to pray before they gave you a bag of food. When the family had people over for dinner, if they ended the prayer before the meal with FHB, Amen, it was a signal to let the children know that they don't have enough food for everyone, so take smaller servings and let the guests get a regular serving. FHB equals family, hold back. They were always generous to their friends and didn't let their lack of funds embarrass themselves when doing so. I was just thinking the same thing. My family was considered antisocial. It wasn't because we didn't like socializing or going to events, it's because we couldn't even afford to, and if mom and dad organized dinners, they planned months beforehand and scraped every cent together to pay for it. My ex was stunned when I told her I've only ever had one birthday party, 21st, because mom and dad had no money.
Hi. Yeah, rich people who want to marry someone significantly poorer. Hello, it's me. Hi.
Sorry to the last author, I'm not sure your method is going to be helped out much here. I just thought I'd spread your industrious gold digging to YouTube as well as in the forum it was originally posted in.
Honestly, food insecurity. When we were first married, she would get visibly uneasy if the food in the house was running low. She'd never overeat or anything, she was just always concerned about it. A lot of times when she was younger, she went hungry. On the humorous side though, she hates camping. Her answer is always the same. I camped because it was fun, and she camped because they couldn't afford hotels. For me, my love of camping started from growing up poor. The only family vacations my single mom and brother and I had were family reunions several states away. It involved long road trips in a crappy car with no AC, but we got to camp in tents and get a break away from reality. We also ate a lot better over a campfire than me making hamburger helper for my brother while my mom went to bed early. She worked hard to support us and battled with depression untreated for years until she could afford medication. Those trips were good for all of us. She and her mother lived with her grandfather to not be homeless because her grandfather owned a house. She was putting community college payments on her credit card and building debt with it. I paid off her credit cards when we were dating and she cried from me being so nice. It was only like $1,300. I bought a condo and we got married, then we bought a house. I never really considered myself rich until I started dating her and learned that a trip to Wendy's was a treat. I grew up middle class and we're currently middle class now. I get giddy with excitement after grocery shopping trips. It just feels so good to even have enough food. Though I still have to constantly remind myself that I'm allowed to eat if I'm hungry, I'm a grown-up. I bought it. That and snacks. We were never allowed to snack between meals and never bought anything extra that wasn't absolutely necessary. My husband had to teach me, you buy something tasty that you don't actually need, and then you can just sit and eat it whenever you feel like it. Amazing. I still don't really do it, but it's nice to know that I can. My wife was born and raised in the Soviet Union. She still goes crazy for fresh fruit like it's the most extravagant luxury. The prevailing mindset in my husband's community growing up was that insurance was something only rich people had. Not health insurance, mind you. Well, not just health insurance. Auto insurance. Going without it was a way of life for most everyone he knew.
My significant other has to constantly remind me that I can go to the doctor whenever I need to, instead of just hoping I don't die. Sandwiches. When I made him a sandwich, I only put one thin slice of meat in it. He couldn't believe that was how I had sandwiches growing up. Growing up, we weren't allowed to just eat deli slices. It had to go between two pieces of bread because that would fill you up faster and save on meat costs. I'm not well off, but my stepfather is. I was raised by a single mum who spent money on everything, and bills were always behind. She just couldn't manage her money at all. In her 50s, she met and married a multi-millionaire. We're in Middle America, so that goes further than maybe in a lot of areas. They've given themselves $10,000 a month budget to live on, living on interest. They own their own home. Anyway, once my mum met him and they all got their finance situated and paid off, she won't spend a penny. He spends like it's going out of style. He's actually begged me to take her shopping to get clothes and accessories. She won't do it. She spent more when she was a single mum with nothing. It makes no sense to me, at least buy a new outfit. She's hell-bent not to use a penny of his money. They barely even have any groceries. If they have anything, it's because he buys it for them. She's a retired nurse that gets a retirement and social security, but she won't spend anything. She lives poorer now than at any other time in her life. This sounds less like a financial issue and more like she's trying to preserve her pride. She knows that people will think she's a gold digger if she spends his money, so she's going to the opposite extreme and refusing to benefit from any of it. Absolutely. Sounds like she doesn't want to come off as a gold digger who spends her husband's money. But also, she may have realized that she doesn't really need to spend much money anymore if basics are covered and she doesn't have young kids. My mum spends very little money, as does my dad. They have money, but they've always been brought up frugal. I realized that the biggest expense has always been us kids. Piano lessons for us, trips for us to see grandparents, dinner if it's our birthdays, toys every so often. Now they don't have to spend on that stuff. They occasionally eat out, they travel a bit, but usually that's paid for by my dad's company. So they just don't spend much. They don't enjoy spending in and of itself, and they just spent money in the past to take care of the family. I didn't marry this woman, but when we started dating, she always just wanted to chill at my place, never hers, which was fine, but she gained 35 pounds in just like a few months of dating. She was 100 pounds when we started dating. Not that it was a bad thing. 1, I'm a chubby man, and 2, I was just glad she wasn't preggers. Anyway, turns out her family couldn't afford dinner sometimes, so suddenly she had a place to eat every night and gorged herself. I know 2 siblings who were starved by their dad for years until CPS took them away and placed them with their biological mother. From there, they gained at least 100 pounds respectively and will not stop gorging themselves on food. At first I didn't understand, but now that I'm older, I know. Food scarcity is traumatizing. I fell in love with my uni best friend who really didn't have any money. When I got a job for my birthday, I decided to plan a holiday and offered to bring him along. He doesn't know I'm in love with him at all, but maybe I should tell him. Well, this is a bold move. I just hope he's not the kind to get insecure about a woman paying the lion's share of that sort of thing. My partner and I are both poor, but different kinds of poor. She's never been homeless or not had enough to eat, while I have. She's extremely frugal and hates buying anything we don't need. I feel a desperate need to stock up if we have any extra money, and it's a fight for me not to fill our house with canned and dry goods in case we don't have enough money to buy food next month for some reason. It makes no sense, but my instinct is to hoard food because there was just never enough of it around growing up. I'm not rich at all, but my husband came from a very poor Mexican village. He told me he used to shower outside because there was no in-house plumbing and use leaves as toilet paper. I mean, there's poor and there's my husband's previous life poor. He's been living in the US for 12 years now, but when we first met it was so interesting seeing life through his childlike eyes. Going to the cinema was a huge event for him. Heating food up in a microwave was a totally foreign concept, and staying at fancy hotels when we went on vacation was like, whoa! I still see him surprised by things now and then, and it just reminds me how much I take my middle status class for granted. Mexican here. You'd be surprised at how common that really is. In Tantoyuca, there's a hill called Hollywood, where there's no plumbing and no government help. There are women there who make tamales and other large numbered meals for every kid in the neighborhood because their parents can't feed them and we don't abandon our own. Also, it's very common to be shocked by things like fancy hotels because ours are nice, sure, but there's no rich gringo nice and it always appalls me on the TV. Hamburger helper. She hates it because it would be her meal 5 times a week growing up. I'd never seen Hamburger Helper before I went to college and I love that stuff. 10 for $10 deals are awesome. My foster daughter was the same way with pasta. She ate so much of it before we got her that she hated it. The first meal I made her on her first night with us? Pasta. She didn't say a word and ate her dinner, but later I found out she didn't like pasta because of how much of it she had eaten before. I always took her grocery shopping so she could pick out stuff she liked after that. She was shocked when she found out red delicious apples weren't the only variety out there. I think she overdosed on Honey Crisp apples when I first introduced them to her. My significant other said, "Today I made rent," meaning today I've earned enough or accumulated enough to pay the rent, and I realized that this is a monthly accomplishment to someone with no fixed income or salary. You can submit your own stories to be featured here on the channel. The story submission link is in the description below, and if you want to listen to some vibey music in the background, check out easymode, also linked below, and subscribe. One of my exes could pull in a lot of money. Easily twice or thrice what I could. He was so incredibly bad at saving this money, down to, say, setting himself up as a company to avoid paying higher rate of tax, but then paying a large amount each month to an accounting company to handle his taxes, which he'd do himself anyway because he didn't trust them to get it right. He'd pay for taxis from one end of the city to the other, or hire cars rather than use public transport. Flights cancelled? Book new ones. Never even bother to claim back on insurance. Buy a sports car? Wreck it? Sell it for scrap. He'd work contracts and then take time off work on his own startup, but spend every weekend just going out and buying substances and booze. Haha, money really means nothing to you, huh? But then when we became a long-term couple, I started to feel like his mother. Man, will you not just fill out the insurance paperwork? I had an ex that must have made 6 figures as a specialty electrician of some sort, but legitimately had no clue how much, because his work would pay for things for him. I have no idea how it all worked out, but his work paid for all of his lodging and reoccurring bills. Cable, utilities, weekly maid service, so he had no idea how much any of that stuff costed. Even after that, he ate out, drank, and smoked constantly, had multiple state-of-the-art entertainment systems, played hockey, had Yankees season tickets, 10K plus, and kept envelopes of cash from cashed paychecks around his house. I asked once how he does his taxes. The company handled it. Oh, and he had multiple DUIs where he or the company paid for a lawyer, and then did at least one of those rehab programs where you're monitored and substance tested constantly. I can't imagine any of that was cheap. My husband grew up in a family where they were comfortable but on a strict budget. 6 kids and mum on disability. My family had no budget. One day we were at the grocery store and he always insists on walking up and down every aisle. I finally lost it because he was taking so long and asked him why he did it. Growing up, we could only spend $100 a week on groceries for all of us. I always had to put what I wanted back because I couldn't afford it. Now I can afford whatever I like, so I just like to look at everything I could have. Took him 10 years to tell me this. I felt like a terrible person. I've had a few people write in that $100 a week is a huge budget, and how is that a stretch? We live in a city with an extremely high cost of living. It's in the top 30 in the world. Getting a family of 4 fed for that much weekly would be a huge stretch here, and his family did an amazing job. Not rich per se, but with a partner who was raised by a teen mom and grew up poor. Sometimes I just want rice and vegetables for dinner, and that's a no from her. She won't go back to that life. My dad was the opposite. Grew up poor and built a business up and ended up doing quite well. He still eats like there's only 25 cents in his checking account. Left alone, he would gladly eat ramen every day, and his go-to meal is rice porridge. We went to Osteria Francescana in Modena a few years ago, literally named the best restaurant in the world. We all went for the tasting menu, but he asked to order à la carte. And he wanted to order buttered fettuccine. He only agreed to the tasting menu when they insisted that the whole table had to do it if some of us were doing it. He'll even insist on eating things that have been burnt or drink milk that's just starting to turn. I was with a girl for a while who grew up in a pretty broken home. Still surprises me just how bad her spending habits are. She racks up credit card debt like it's nothing. She lived in the desert without air conditioning. The narrator would dearly love some context here. Did she grow up in the desert? Or was she choosing to live out there when there were better options available to save on cost of living? We've been long-term dating. She comes from a lower-income family than me. Pets. I was always surprised by the number of pets she and her family had living in the trailer and how much of a share of their income they spent on them. My dad is a successful business owner now with several houses and multiple sources of income. But he grew up dirt poor when he had parents and became even poorer when he was out on his own at 14. Think sleeping on the floor of a gas station men's room poor. To this day, he'll take a small handful of cereal out of his bowl before he pours milk in and put it back in the box, so he'll always have some cereal for later. Over 40 years later, and the pain and worry of growing up poor without luxuries like breakfast cereal will still affect him. Growing up without money does crappy things to people. Credit cards were avoided. For me growing up, we were encouraged to get a credit card in our name and use it as much as possible in order to build credit. There was always money to pay it off each month, so it made sense to 1. Build credit and 2. Collect airline miles or whatever the reward was back in the day. When we got together, she always used cash or debit card. She had a credit card for emergencies and avoided using it otherwise. It took a long time to get her over her aversion and skepticism. We were fortunate enough to have 2 good-paying jobs, though it also taught me a healthy appreciation for what it means to have a financial cushion. I dated a 1%er briefly. She was surprised I willingly went inside fast food restaurants. Since people are saying 1% is still a huge range of income, I just looked up her dad and he pulls in over $10 million a year. I'm not dating her, but she's a good friend of mine and her parents are definitely 1%ers. I told her I had to work this summer to save up for graduation and that money was going to be tight for the next year, but I'd love to go on a safari after graduation if I managed to save enough. Mind you, I'm solidly upper middle class. Her parents paid for it just because I'd helped her move into her apartment. It's not like that's what friends are for or anything. It's hard to see it this way, but paying for your trip was not a hardship for them. It was a small blip that was a nice thing to do for a friend, just like helping your friend move was a blip for you. I'm from a middle-class family, but my wife's parents are near billionaires, 0.001%. She was shocked about many things. 1. That I considered the cost of food and groceries at all. They'll go to gourmet food stores and spend over $1,000 and say things like, well, it's for food. We're ingesting this stuff, it should be the best. 2. Booking non-first-class airfare on any long trip would be considered cruel and unusual punishment to her. 3. No concerns about utilities, insurance premiums, no comparison shopping on routine things at all. 4. Every vacation is the finest you can imagine, oftentimes bordering on ridiculous, having so many upsells on packages and bespoke items that it's just wasteful. 5. No concept of debt and understanding of how normal people live. 6. My wife was shocked when I save things that get wet or muddy. She would just want to throw things like clothes and fine items in the trash away when they were just lightly bruised. We're very much in love and have shown each other a lot. She enjoys hanging with my salt-of-the-earth mum more than her own family at this point. I like being spoiled here and there as well. It's a great mix. Now I've adopted her standard of living. We met in medical school. She did a decent job of hiding her privilege there. Our relationship grew out of our shared sense of humor and, of course, physical attraction. Not super rich by any means, but my husband said he'll always be surprised by the following. How I lived off $13K in 2011. Resiliency to survive financially and pursue my dreams of being the first college graduate in my family. How I didn't know what spinach was or tasted like until our first few dates, in addition to a lot of other leafy greens. First real date in my 20s. We went to a steakhouse. When the waiter asked how I wanted my steak, I said cooked. Ha! Yikes. Didn't know there was any other way than how my dad cooked steaks. Cheap flat steaks topped with ketchup or ranch dressing. I was the poor one. It absolutely floored me how my wife acts when something broke like a car, appliance, clothes, etc. As a child living below the poverty line, replacing a tire or other necessities was a disaster, requiring tricky trade-offs in the budget or just plain acceptance of how boned you were. When my wife's phone broke, I went into full panic mode while she just shrugged and said, "We can just get a new one this afternoon." And then we did. I'm normally a Picasso, MacGyver of the duct tape and trash bag world. This skill helped me break into IT. Sadly, the phone was beyond repair. Trust me, if I could have fixed it, I would have. In my case, I'm from the wealthy family and my partner grew up poor. A couple of months ago, our new TV from a big box store broke suddenly. He bought the warranty, which I never do, I didn't think they worked, and he spent like 5 hours on the phone over 3 days and got us a replacement TV, which is not something I would have done or thought of doing, which makes me sound so spoiled, but I learned something for sure. He was making good money but came from a poor family. One thing that surprised me was the lack of budgeting. No knowledge of 401k or Roth IRA. Retirement seemed like something that he'd never get to do. Even though he made good money, he was starting to rack up credit card debt. Now he's much better at it than I am. He adores budgeting and looks forward to financial independence and retiring early. I'm from the poorer family. Not super poor, but my in-laws have a stupid amount of money, so by comparison, I'm very poor. But I think I can answer for her. We have 2 young kids, and my wife was shocked when I said we should look for clothes and toys for them at a local flea market and garage sales. The idea never occurred to her that we could save money by getting some gently used items. She had never even been to a garage sale in her life. She's grown to love them and now questions whether it's worth to buy any item new or not before running to Amazon or a store. Her parents think it's disgusting we make our kids wear clothes that another child had before, but they don't pay my bills. She wouldn't waste any food ever. We went through a few rounds of her getting sick from eating month-old muffins and similar before I convinced her it was okay to toss old food and go shopping. My wife genuinely thought, and her family still does, that there's some direct relationship between someone's net worth and the labels they purchase. If someone doesn't have a Gucci bag or a Rolex watch, why, it's because they can't afford it. My wife was astonished when I first told her that people exist that are ultra-wealthy and yet drive old cars and wear clothes without labels. When you subscribe, make sure to hit the bell to turn on notifications. Put the playlist on in the background to finish listening to all the stories, or if you want some vibey music to put on in the background, check out easymode. If you like Am I the Genius, give Am I the Jerk a shot. Everything linked in the description.